Have you ever stopped to think that beneath the colourful battles, the shiny evolutions, and the triumphant gym victories, the world of Pokémon hides some of the most heartbreaking stories imaginable? I mean, we grew up with these creatures as our childhood companions, Pikachu zapping foes with adorable thunderbolts, Charmander lighting up our dreams like a loyal campfire. But peel back the layers of that glossy surface and you'll find a universe steeped in loss, abandonment, betrayal, and raw, unrelenting grief. Stories that make you question everything you thought you knew about this franchise we love so much. Welcome to Top 10 Most Tragic Pokémon Stories. I'm your host, and over the next 3 hours we're diving deep, really deep, into the shadows of the Pokémon world. This isn't your typical Top 10 countdown where we skim the fun facts and move on. No, this is a full exploration, chapter by chapter, unpacking the lore that's been tucked away in Pokédex entries, forgotten side quests, and those subtle hints in the games that hit you like a midnight thunderbolt. If you're here for nostalgia mixed with a gut punch of emotion, buckle up. We're talking orphans left to wander in eternal mourning, ancient kings driven mad by impossible love, and spirits trapped in forms that echo their final moments of despair. These aren't just backstories, they're tragedies that reveal the fragile heart of Pokémon, a world where joy and sorrow are two sides of the same Pokéball. But before we go any further, I know many of you fall asleep to my videos, so here's a quick tip. Bookmark our sleepy playlist so you can return to it whenever you need some help falling asleep. I will keep my narration calm and gradually dim the brightness for you. The only thing I ask in return is that you click the thumbs up on this video and leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're listening from. I love seeing how Pokémon connects us all around the world. Thank you again for all your support. Now back to the video. Picture this. You boot up your first Pokémon game, Red version or whatever started your journey, and it's all about adventure, friendship, catching them all. But as you level up, you start noticing the cracks. Why does that lonely little bone-wielding dinosaur cry out at night, clutching something that looks like a skull? Or why is there a ghost haunting the Pokémon Tower, refusing to pass on because of a life cut short by human greed? These aren't random flavor text. They're windows into a lore that's surprisingly mature, blending fantasy with themes of death, isolation, and the human trainer condition. Pokémon isn't just about battling. It's about the bonds we form and the pain when those bonds shatter. And today, we're studying the most tragic of them all, the ones that linger long after the credits roll. Let's set the stage properly. The Pokémon universe spans generations, from the sun-drenched fields of Kanto to the war-torn skies of Kalos, and in every region, tragedy lurks. It's in the abandoned mansions where shadows whisper of forgotten owners, the misty forests where lost souls take root, and the distorted dimensions where outcasts brood in silence. These stories aren't invented for shock value. They're woven into the fabric of the games, anime hints, and manga expansions. Game Freak has always had a knack for subtlety, dropping these emotional bombshells without fanfare, letting players piece together the heartbreak. And that's what makes them so powerful. You don't need graphic violence. The tragedy comes from the quiet what-ifs, the echoes of lives unlived. Think about the core of Pokémon. It's a story of harmony between humans and Pokémon, right? But flip that coin and you see the discord. Humans abandon their partners. Pokémon suffer in silence. And sometimes, the line between trainer and monster blurs into something profoundly sad. We're going to explore 10 of the most gut-wrenching tales, each one a chapter in this grand, sorrowful tapestry. From the orphan who wears its mother's remains as armour, forever marked by loss, to the frail child whose every breath is a battle just to hold on to hope. These aren't heroes' triumphs. They're the undercurrents of pain that make the victories mean something. Why study this? Because understanding the tragedy elevates the entire franchise. It turns Pikachu from a cute mascot into a symbol of what could be lost if we don't cherish our connections. It makes you appreciate the lore's depth, how a simple creature design can carry the weight of 1,000 tears. And honestly, in a world full of escapist fun, confronting these stories head-on, it's cathartic. It's a reminder that even in fantasy, grief is universal. Whether you're a long-time fan revisiting old wounds or a newcomer shocked by the darkness, this journey will change how you see your next playthrough. So, how are we structuring this epic? We'll take it slow, savouring each story like a rare candy you don't want to rush. For every entry, I'll break down the origins, pulling from the game's Pokédex and official lore, then dive into the emotional core, the what happened next implications, and even some fan theories that add layers without spoiling the canon. We'll pause for reflections, maybe tie in real-world parallels to why these tales hit so hard. No rushing through. This is 3 hours of immersion, designed to keep you hooked from the first lonely cry to the last bittersweet resolution. But before we jump in, let's talk stakes. These stories aren't light. They deal with death, manipulation, exile, and the kind of loneliness that could break even the toughest trainer. If you're sensitive to themes of loss or abandonment, maybe grab a tissue or a comforting Pokémon plush. Yet, there's beauty in the tragedy too. Many of these tales end with glimmers of redemption, perseverance, or eternal watchfulness. It's that balance that makes Pokémon enduring. Alright, deep breath. We're about to enter a world where the Pokéball isn't always an escape. Sometimes it's a cage for the soul. Ready to uncover the tears behind the triumphs? Unveiling Pokémon's hidden heartbreak. Did you know that in the Pokémon world, every adorable creature you catch and train carries a shadow of sorrow that the games barely whisper about? It's true. Those pixelated battles and cheerful soundtracks mask layers of loss, betrayal, and eternal grief woven right into the lore. Today, we're peeling back that glossy surface to reveal the hidden heartbreak that makes Pokémon more than just a game. It's a tapestry of tragedy disguised as adventure. Think about it. You boot up the game, select your starter, and dive into a world bursting with colour and excitement. Pikachu's cheeks spark with electricity, Charmander's tail flame dances happily, and Bulbasaur looks ready for a picnic. But scratch beneath those cute designs, and you'll find backstories that hit like a thunderbolt to the chest. Pokémon aren't just monsters to collect. Many are born from death, abandonment, or unimaginable pain. It's this stark contrast that gives the series its emotional punch, turning what seems like kid-friendly fun into something profoundly moving. Why do you think fans still talk about these stories decades later? Because they remind us that even in fantasy, loss feels real. Let me paint a picture for you with words alone, since we're diving into this audio journey together. Imagine hearing the faint, echoing wails of ghostly cries piercing the night in an empty Pokémon tower. No visuals needed, just the sound of sorrow, like a child lost in the fog, calling out for a mother who'll never answer, or picture the desolation of abandoned worlds, crumbling ruins where once vibrant towns stood, now haunted by shadows of what was. These aren't random eerie effects, they're clues to the deeper tragedies lurking in the lore. They pull you in, don't they? That chill down your spine isn't from fear, it's from realising how much heartbreak the creators hid in plain sight. This chapter is our gateway into that emotional underbelly. We're talking about the tragic undercurrents that flow through every generation, from the pixelated origins of Red and Blue to the lush philosophical landscapes of Kalos in X and Y. It's not about spoiling the fun, it's about appreciating how these dark threads make the light moments shine brighter. You see, Pokémon's charm lies in its duality. The cute exteriors lure you in, but the backstories, they linger, making you question every capture, every evolution. Have you ever looked at a Yamask and wondered why its eyes seem so sad? Or heard a Cubone's lonely bone club strike and felt a pang of empathy? That's the magic and the melancholy of it all. To set the stage properly, let's talk about why this matters to you as a fan. Maybe you grew up trading cards at recess, dreaming of becoming a master, Or perhaps you're a newer player, discovering the series through Pokémon Go on your daily walk. Either way, these stories add depth that keeps us coming back. They're not filler, they're the soul of the franchise. And in this video, we're counting down the top 10 most tragic Pokémon tales, each one a revelation that contrasts the game's joy with raw, human-like emotion. We'll journey from the ghostly hauntings of Generation 1 to the time-bending regrets of X and Y, uncovering lore that's equal parts heartbreaking and unforgettable. Take, for instance, the way orphaned Pokémon wander desolate areas, their cries echoing in forgotten corners. It's not just atmosphere, it's a hint at lives upended by loss, or consider spirits bound to objects, forever trapped in cycles of mourning. These elements aren't accidents. They're deliberate nods to tragedy that make the world feel alive, even in its pain. You can almost hear those ghostly cries now, can't you? Soft at first, building to a crescendo that tugs at your heartstrings. And the abandoned worlds? They're like ghost towns in a fairy tale, whispering of battles long lost and bonds shattered beyond repair. This is the emotional depth we're exploring today, the kind that turns a simple playthrough into a reflective experience. As we gear up for this countdown, let's linger on that contrast a bit more, because it's the key to understanding the heartbreak. Pokémon designs are engineered for cuteness. Big eyes, rounded features, colours that pop on screen. It's psychology at work. They make you want to protect them. But then the lore drops a bomb. A seemingly playful creature reveals an origin steeped in death or betrayal. It's jarring, yet brilliant. It mirrors real life, where joy and sorrow coexist. Why else would a game about friendship include tales of manipulation and exile? These stories challenge you to see beyond the surface, to empathise with digital beings in ways that feel surprisingly human. Now imagine you're wandering through the games yourself, stumbling upon these hints. In the dim glow of a cave, you encounter a Pokémon that's not aggressive but withdrawn, its animations subtle cries for connection. Or in a misty forest, shadows flicker, suggesting presences that were once full of life but now fade into obscurity. Those teaser moments, the ghostly wails cutting through upbeat music, the empty shells of worlds left behind. They're hooks designed to unsettle you just enough to dig deeper. And dig we will. Our top 10 list pulls from across the generations, spotlighting tragedies that range from personal losses to cosmic exiles. From the raw grief of a lone survivor in Kanto's towers to the ancient regrets echoing through Kalus's eternal flowers, each entry promises a revelation that redefines your favourites. But let's not rush ahead. Before we hit that countdown, consider how these undercurrents shape the entire Pokémon universe. Arceus, the creator god, banishes one of its own to eternal isolation. Harsh, right? Or humans wielding ultimate weapons that backfire into millennia of suffering. Even trainers face their own heartaches, frail bodies battling not just foes but inner demons. It's this web of tragedy that connects everything, making the cute designs feel like veils over wounds that never fully heal. You feel it building, don't you? That anticipation for the stories that will make you pause mid-game, staring at your team with new eyes. To really drive this home, think about the emotional stages these tales evoke. First, surprise, how did I miss this? Then curiosity, what else is hidden? Finally, a quiet sadness that deepens your attachment. The ghostly cries aren't just sound effects. They're the voices of the forgotten, pleading for remembrance. Abandoned worlds aren't empty sets. They're monuments to what was destroyed in the name of progress or power. By unveiling this, we're not just listing facts. We're inviting you to feel the weight of Pokémon's hidden heart. It's what elevates the series from entertainment to something almost therapeutic. A reminder that even in escapism, emotions run deep. As we prepare to dive into the specifics, let's tease the scope of our top 10. Starting with classics from Generation 1, where a mother's ghost haunts the living, we'll move through isolated upbringings in Unova that twist innocence into manipulation. Then, ancient weapons in Kalos that promise revival, but deliver devastation. Ghosts from human pasts, forest spirits born of young deaths, vengeful toys seeking lost love. These are just glimpses. Each one contrasts the adorable with the agonizing, like a shiny Pokémon hiding a scarred evolution line. From Yamask's tear-streaked masks to Mimikyu's desperate disguises, the lore overflows with pain, masked as playfulness. And don't get me started on exiled legends or frail heroes pushing through illness. They hit different, making you root harder for the happy endings that feel earned. You might be wondering, why focus on tragedy now? Because understanding the dark side amplifies the light. That victory against the Elite Four, sweeter when you know the costs some paid along the way. The bonds you form, stronger when contrasted with tales of broken ones. This introduction isn't about dwelling in gloom, it's about celebrating the complexity. Those teaser clips in your mind, the cries, the ruins, they're invitations to explore. And explore we will, generation by generation, uncovering how Game Freak wove real emotional stakes into a world of wonder. Let me share a quick reflection to pull you closer. I remember my first playthrough of Red. Everything felt epic, untouchable. Then I learned about certain ghosts, and suddenly the tower wasn't scary, it was sad. That shift is what keeps Pokémon alive in our hearts. Now multiply that by 10, and you've got the revelations ahead. From Gen 1's orphan woes to X and Y's timeless laments, each story builds on the last, creating a symphony of sorrow that's oddly uplifting. Why? Because in facing these heartbreaks, resilience too, the drive to connect despite the pain. As we wrap this unveiling, hold on to that sense of depth. The cute designs are the bait, the dark backstories are the truth. Those ghostly cries, they're starting to fade into focus, pointing us toward our first tragedy. Up next, in the orphaned Cubone's eternal mourning, we'll uncover a tale so poignant it redefines a fan favourite forever. Prepare to feel the weight of a skull that hides more than bones. You won't want to miss how this little one's grief echoes through the games, pulling at every string in your chest. The orphaned Cubone's eternal mourning. Did you know that one of the most iconic Pokémon designs hides a story so steeped in sorrow that it tugs at the heartstrings of even the toughest trainers? Cubone, that small hooded figure with a bone club clutched in its tiny paws, isn't just a ground-type battler. It's a living emblem of grief, forever marked by the death of its mother. From the moment it hatches, Cubone's life is defined by loss, a profound, inescapable void that shapes every step it takes through the tall grass and shadowed caves of the Pokémon world. Let's start at the beginning, because understanding Cubone's origin requires peeling back the layers of its quiet tragedy. In the lore of the Pokémon universe, Cubone is born under the most heartbreaking circumstances. Its mother, a fierce Marowak, meets a tragic end shortly after giving birth. Whether it's a battle gone wrong, a predator in the wild, or some unseen peril, the details vary across regions, but the outcome is always the same. The mother perishes, leaving her newborn alone in a world that's suddenly vast and unforgiving. You can almost hear the silence that follows, the kind that presses in like a heavy fog, broken only by the faint cries of the orphaned youngling. This isn't just any Pokémon story, it's one rooted in the raw pain of separation, where the bond between parent and child isn't just broken, it's shattered, leaving fragments that Cubone carries for life. And those fragments, they're literal. The most striking part of Cubone's design, that bony helmet it wears over its head, isn't some random accessory or evolutionary quirk. No, it's the skull of its deceased mother. Imagine that for a second. A tiny Pokémon, barely able to stand on its own, donning the very remains of the one who brought it into existence. It's a desperate act of clinging to what's lost, a way to keep her close in a world that has already taken her away. Pokémon lore describes how Cubone refuses to remove this skull, even as it grows, because doing so would mean facing the full horror of its solitude. The skull shields its eyes from the world, but more than that, it shields its soul from the overwhelming reality of abandonment. Every time Cubone moves, that bone rattles softly against its body, a constant reminder of the warmth it once knew, now reduced to cold, unyielding calcium. This profound loss doesn't fade with time. It echoes through Cubone's every action. Have you ever wondered why this Pokémon seems so withdrawn, so hesitant in battles unless pushed to its limits? It's because its entire existence is built on that initial rupture. In the wild, Cubone wanders alone, avoiding packs of other Pokémon, preferring the dim corners of caves where the darkness mirrors the shadow in its heart. Trainers who catch a Cubone often notice how it huddles in the back of its Pokeball, emerging only when necessary, as if the outside world is too bright, too full of life for something born from death. It's a poignant detail that makes you rethink those early gym battles in Kanto or Johto. What if the Cubone you commanded was crying out not just for victory, but for the mother it could never reclaim? But the grief doesn't stay silent. Oh no, it finds its voice in the most haunting way possible. Every night, as the moon rises over the Pokémon League routes, Cubone lets out its wails. These aren't ordinary cries, they're deep, mournful howls that pierce the stillness, echoing across valleys and into the ears of anyone nearby. The Pokédex entries paint this picture vividly. Cubone weeps for its lost parent, the sound carrying the weight of unbreakable bonds severed by death. It's as if the skull amplifies its sorrow, turning personal pain into a symphony of loss that resonates with anyone who's ever felt the sting of farewell. You might hear it while camping in the Viridian Forest or near the Pokémon Tower in Lavender Town, that low, keening sob that makes even the bravest trainers pause and listen. Is it calling for her, begging the stars to bring her back, or simply releasing the ache that builds up during the day? Whatever the reason, these nightly wails symbolize something universal, the enduring tie between loved ones, one that death can't fully erase no matter how hard it tries. Think about how this plays out in the games. In Pokémon Red and Blue, when you first encounter a wild Cubone, it's often alone, skulking in the shadows of Rock Tunnel, its bone club dragged behind it like a security blanket. You battle it, capture it, and maybe evolve it later, but that core sadness lingers. Even in the anime, episodes featuring Cubone highlight this isolation. Remember the one where Ash's group stumbles upon a Cubone mourning at a gravesite? The way it clings to its club, tears streaming from beneath the skull. It's impossible not to feel a lump in your throat. These wails aren't just flavor text, they're a narrative thread that weaves through fan theories and artwork, inspiring countless stories of orphaned Pokémon seeking solace. And for us viewers, they hit hard because they mirror our own experiences. Who hasn't lost someone and felt that hollow echo in the quiet hours? Now, as Cubone grows, this mourning doesn't vanish, it transforms, much like the Pokémon itself. Evolution into Marowak marks a turning point, but not one of pure triumph. When Cubone levels up and sheds some of its youth, it becomes Marowak, a taller, more formidable warrior with a bone staff and an aura of quiet strength. Yet, even in this evolved form, the maternal sacrifice haunts it. Marowak wields its bone club with a ferocity born from protection, as if channeling the mother's final stand to safeguard what she left behind. The Pokédex notes how Marowak too wears the skull, now more like armour than a helmet, a badge of the loss that forged its resolve. But beneath that warrior exterior lies the same orphaned heart. It's a Pokémon that's learned to fight through pain, turning grief into power, yet never fully escaping the shadow of what was taken. This evolution isn't just a stat boost, it's a psychological journey. Picture a young Cubone, wailing into the night, gradually standing taller, swinging its club with purpose. But every strike carries the weight of that sacrifice, the mother's life given so that Cubone could live. In battles, Marowak's attacks feel vengeful, almost ritualistic, as if it's honouring her by proving its survival. Trainers who raise a Marowak from a Cubone often share stories online about how the Pokémon bonds deeply but fiercely, protective to a fault, as though afraid of losing another piece of family. It's this haunted evolution that elevates Cubone's story from sad to tragic epic, a tale of growth amid unending sorrow, where becoming stronger means carrying the past heavier on your shoulders. Delving deeper, the lore expands on how this maternal bond influences Cubone's behaviour in the wild. Mother Marowak are known for their nurturing yet fierce nature, teaching their young to hunt and hide early on. But when tragedy strikes, say a raid by poachers or a territorial dispute, the offspring is left to fend for itself, adopting the skull as both shield and heirloom. This act of wearing the remains isn't morbid. It's a cultural rite in Pokémon society, a way for the child to embody the parent's spirit. Yet for Cubone, it's eternal mourning personified. The nightly cries, they're not random. They're timed with the phases of the moon, peaking on full nights when the world feels most exposed. Fans speculate this ties into lunar cycles in Pokémon mythology, where the moon represents forgotten souls, amplifying the grief until it spills out. You have to wonder, what does this mean for a trainer who catches such a Pokémon? Bonding with Cubone requires patience, earning its trust through quiet moments rather than flashy wins. In INTO competitive play, a well-trained Cubone line shines in defensive strategies, using moves like Bonemerang to strike and retreat, mirroring its instinct to protect the fragile core beneath the skull. But emotionally, it's rewarding, seeing that wary little guy open up, its wails turning to contented grunts after a tough battle. It's a reminder that behind every Pokémon is a story, and Cubone's is one of resilience forged in fire. Expanding on the symbolism, those unbreakable bonds severed by death speak to broader themes in Pokémon lore. Cubone represents the idea that loss shapes us irrevocably, yet we persist. In spin-off media, like Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, Cubone characters often grapple with identity, questioning if the skull defines them or if they can forge a new path. It's heartbreaking because it parallels human experiences. Children losing parents, carrying their memory like armour into adulthood. The wails? They're cathartic, a release that prevents the grief from consuming entirely. Without them, Cubone might fade into silence forever, but instead, it sings its sorrow, keeping the bond alive. As we explore Marowak's warrior side, consider how the evolution amplifies this haunting. Marowak isn't just stronger, it's a guardian, patrolling routes where orphaned Pokémon gather, as if driven by an inherited duty. In Alola, the regional variant adds fire to its bones, symbolising passion born from pain, the flames of memory, burning eternal. Trainers in those games note how Alolan Marowak dances with its staff, a ritual to honour the lost, blending mourning with celebration. Yet the sacrifice lingers. Without the mother's guidance, Marowak learns through trial, each scar a testament to survival. This story resonates because it's so viscerally real. In a franchise full of joy, Cubone's eternal mourning stands out, forcing us to confront the darker undercurrents. You might replay old games now, listening for those cries in the background music, or draw your own fan art of a Cubone under moonlight. It's that depth that makes Pokémon more than a game. It's a tapestry of emotions, with Cubone as one of its saddest threads. But the tale of Cubone doesn't end with evolution or wails. It ties into even darker events, that cast long shadows over Kanto. Up next, in Marowak's Ghost and Team Rocket's shadow, we'll uncover the chilling encounter that turns this personal tragedy into a spectral nightmare, where loss collides with human cruelty in ways that will leave you questioning the safety of the Pokémon world. Marowak's Ghost and Team Rocket's shadow. In the shadowy heights of Pokémon Tower in Lavender Town, one of the most gut-wrenching tragedies unfolds. A story that cuts right to the heart of loss and unrelenting vengeance. You know the place of that eerie, fog-shrouded building where ghosts roam and the air feels heavy with unspoken grief. But what you might not realise is that, at the core of it all, lies the brutal tale of Marowak, a fierce protector gunned down by Team Rocket in cold blood. Let's dive straight into the horror of it. Back in the original Pokémon games from Generation 1, Pokémon Tower isn't just a spooky dungeon for catching spectres. It's a memorial ground, a place where trainers pay respects to fallen Pokémon. But hidden on its upper floors, a darker truth lurks. Team Rocket, those relentless criminals with their black uniforms and smug attitudes, had infiltrated the tower not for ghosts, but for something far more sinister. They were smuggling Pokémon, treating them like mere commodities to fuel Giovanni's empire, and standing in their way was Marowak, a lone warrior who refused to let her kind be taken. Moment, not with your eyes but feel it in your chest. Marowak, the evolved form of Cubone, bone club in hand, charges at the rocket grunts. She's no pushover. Her attacks are swift, her resolve unbreakable. But these aren't fair battles. The grunts, cornered and desperate, pull out guns. Yes, actual firearms in the Pokémon world. A rare and chilling detail that the games imply through dialogue and aftermath. Bullets fly and Marowak falls, not in a blaze of glory or a heroic standoff, but in a hail of lead that ends her life right there on the cold stone floors. The tower meant for mourning becomes the site of fresh murder. Her body is left behind, a stark warning to any other Pokémon who dare resist. You can almost hear the echoes of that final clash, can't you? The clatter of her bone club dropping, the grunts' hurried whispers as they drag away their stolen cargo. Marowak's death isn't just a plot point, it's a pivotal event that shakes the foundation of Kanto's underbelly. Without her stand, Team Rocket's operations might have gone unchecked, but her sacrifice exposes their cruelty. And yet, that's only the beginning of the sorrow, because death in Pokémon lore doesn't always mean the end, especially not for a spirit as fierce as hers. Fast forward a bit, and you, as the player, step into the tower yourself. The atmosphere is thick with unease, wild ghastly float about, moaning softly, but something feels off on the top floor. Your screen flickers, the music warps into something haunting, and there she is, Marowak's ghost. Not a friendly haunt, but a vengeful apparition, her skeletal form glowing with ethereal rage. She attacks without mercy, her moves infused with the pain of betrayal. You have to battle her, not to capture, but to put her spirit to rest. Win or lose, the weight of it lingers. Why won't she move on? Because justice hasn't been served. Team Rocket's shadow still looms over Lavender Town, their hideout buried beneath the Sylph-Code building, plotting more chaos. This ghostly return is Marowak's way of screaming into the void. She refuses to fade until her killers are confronted, until the cycle of violence she's endured stops. In the game's narrative, defeating her ghost is your cue to pursue Team Rocket, leading you to the Rocket hideout in Celadon City and eventually to Giovanni himself. It's a direct thread of vengeance, pulling you deeper into the region's conflicts. But here's where it gets even more poignant. Marowak wasn't just fighting for herself, she was a mother. Enter Cubone, the lonely orphan whose story intertwines with this tragedy like roots in dark soil. Cubone, known as the lonely Pokémon, always wears a skull over its head, a mask that hides its face and muffles its cries. The Pokédex entries tell us why. It's the skull of its deceased mother, a constant reminder of the loss that defines its existence. Cubone wanders alone, weeping under the cover of night, its sobs carrying on the wind, like a lament for what was taken too soon. In many interpretations of the lore, that mother is none other than Marowak herself. When she fell to those bullets, she left behind a child who would inherit not just her bone club, but her unending grief. Think about that for a second. A baby Pokémon, barely able to fend for itself, orphaned in the shadows of human ambition. Cubone's cries aren't just sad sounds, they're a call for the mother who can never return. And after you defeat Marowak's ghost in the tower, those cries intensify. The game's subtle audio cues shift. Cubone's howls grow louder, more desperate, echoing through the roots and caves where it appears. It's as if the slaying of the ghost reopens the wound, revealing a cycle of inherited sorrow that no evolution or badge can break. Evolving into Marowak might make Cubone stronger, but it doesn't heal the heart. The mask stays on, the tears flow, generation after generation. This twist hits hard because it shows how tragedy ripples outward. Marowak's death isn't isolated, it births a lineage of loneliness. Wild Cubone you encounter aren't just random foes, they're echoes of that original loss, Pokémon doomed to relive the pain through their own masks and midnight wails. In fan theories and deeper lore dives, some even speculate that every Cubone wears its mother's skull, perpetuating the cycle eternally. It's a heartbreaking loop. Mother dies protecting the young. Young grows up masked in mourning, only to face the same dangers. Team Rocket's bullets didn't just end one life, they cursed a whole species with sorrow. But let's not stop at the surface. There's so much more to unpack here. In the anime, this story gets even more visceral. Remember the episode where Ash and his friends visit Pokémon Tower? They encounter a Mother Marowak gunned down by poachers. Not Team Rocket exactly, but the parallel is unmistakable. Her ghost lingers, protecting her orphaned Cubone with fierce determination. The little one clings to her spirit, refusing to let go until Ash helps broker a farewell. It's tear-jerking, the way the ghost fades only after ensuring her child's safety. Her final act, one of maternal love, transcending death. And in the manga adaptations like Pokémon Adventures, the tower sequence amps up the stakes. Marowak's fall is witnessed, her blood staining the floors, forcing characters like Red to confront the brutality head-on. Why does this resonate so deeply with us? Because it's raw. Pokémon is often about friendship and growth, but stories like this remind you of the stakes. Marowak's ghost isn't a villain. She's a victim demanding accountability, refusing to rest until justice is served. That's her rallying cry. And you, the trainer, become the instrument of that justice, battling through Rocket's ranks to dismantle their operations. Defeating Giovanni in the Viridian Gym feels personal after the tower. It's payback for the bone-wielding mother who stood alone. Expand that to the broader world. Lavender Town itself is a character in this tragedy, a town built around a massive tower of tombstones, where the living commune with the dead. The music there, that infamous Lavender Town Syndrome tune, underscores the melancholy. Kids playing the game reported eerie feelings, but really, it's the lore that chills, a place where Marowak's unrest infects everything. Even Mr. Fuji, the tower's keeper, lost his own Kadabra to wild Pokémon, mirroring the theme of irreplaceable loss. His story ties back to Marowak, as freeing the ghost leads to his rescue from Rocket's hideout. It's all connected, a web of grief that Team Rocket exploits. Now consider the implications for Cubone's evolution. When a Cubone evolves into Marowak, it sheds the childish mask, but keeps the Bone Club as a weapon, a tool of defense born from death. In battles, Marowak's moves like Bone Meringue or Bone Rush feel like echoes of that fateful stand in the tower. They're not just attacks, they're swings of vengeance, channeling the mother's fury. And if you trade a Cubone holding a thick club, it becomes Alolan Marowak, a fiery variant with a darker, more primal edge, as if the island's volcanic spirit amplifies the inherited rage. But the cycle doesn't break easily. Post-slaying of the ghost, those intensified cries, they signal that sorrow is generational. A wild Cubone you catch might evolve, but its Pokédex entry will still note the tears, the loneliness. In spin-offs like Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, Cubone teams up with others, seeking belonging, but the backstory lingers. It's a reminder that some wounds scar deep, passed down like heirlooms of pain. This tale forces you to question the world you thought you knew. Team Rocket isn't cartoonish evil. Their bullets make them real monsters. Marowak's ghost demands you act, turning passive play into a quest for retribution. And through it all, Cubone's story tugs at your empathy. What would you do if your partner faced such a fate? It's why this ranks among the top tragedies. It's not just loss, it's a haunting call to remember the fallen. As we wrap up this chapter on Marowak's ghost and the shadow of Team Rocket, you can feel the weight of that inherited sorrow lingering. But hold on, because the next layer of heartbreak awaits in N's isolated upbringing in Team Plasma. Imagine a child moulded by manipulation from the start. His world, a cage of lies that shatters everything you believe about trust and control. You won't want to miss how his story twists the knife even deeper. N's isolated upbringing in Team Plasma. In the shadowed halls of Team Plasma's hidden castle, a boy named N grew up believing the world outside was a battlefield of cruelty, where humans chained and tormented Pokémon without mercy. You might remember N from Pokémon Black and White as the enigmatic rival with emerald eyes and a voice that seemed to echo the whispers of the wild. But his story starts far from the spotlight of any championship league. It's a tale of isolation so profound, it shaped one of the most misguided heroes in the Pokémon universe. And it all begins with a life engineered to blind him to the truth. N wasn't born into ordinary circumstances. From the moment he could walk, he was confined to the opulent yet suffocating confines of that castle, a place that looked like a palace on the surface, but functioned more like a prison disguised as a sanctuary. Picture rooms filled with antique tapestries depicting ancient Pokémon legends, libraries stocked with tomes that twisted history to fit a singular agenda, and gardens where exotic flowers bloomed under artificial lights because the real sun was deemed too dangerous for someone as precious as him. This was his gilded cage, a luxurious enclosure built by the very man who claimed to be his father. Getsis Harmonia, the cunning leader of Team Plasma. Getsis raised N with an iron grip masked as paternal care, ensuring that no other human ever crossed his path. There were no playmates from the nearby towns, no schoolyard friends to share secrets with, no family gatherings to laugh and argue over. N's world was a vacuum of human interaction, deliberately curated to keep him pure, also Getsis preached. Instead, N's companions were the Pokémon that wandered into his life, drawn perhaps by the boy's innate ability to understand their hearts. He'd spend hours in the castle's vast courtyards, listening to the gentle coos of Pidove perched on his shoulder, or the playful splashes of Timpole in the fountains. These weren't just pets to him. They were his family, his teachers, his everything. Think about what that does to a child's mind. Without human voices to challenge or comfort him, N turned to the Pokémon for guidance. He'd sit cross-legged on the cold stone floors, his small hands extended as a herd of deerling nuzzled against him, their seasonal coats brushing his skin like a living blanket. Or he'd wander the dimly lit corridors at night, conversing with a Zorua that could shift into illusions of forgotten friends, making N wonder if the world beyond the walls held such magic for everyone. These bonds weren't superficial. N could hear their thoughts, feel their joys and pains as if they were his own. It was a gift, or maybe a curse, that Ghetsis exploited from the start. Through these interactions, N learned to see Pokémon not as tools for battle or spectacle, but as sentient beings deserving of freedom. And in that isolation, his empathy blossomed into something unbreakable, yet dangerously one-sided. But Ghetsis didn't leave N's education to chance encounters alone. He orchestrated every lesson, every story told by the flickering light of a chandelier, to paint humans as the ultimate villains. From a young age, N was fed a steady diet of propaganda disguised as wisdom. Ghetsis would kneel beside him during evening meals of fine silverware and Pokémon-safe delicacies, and recount tales of trainers who whipped their companions into submission, of cities where Pokémon were discarded like broken toys once they outlived their usefulness. "Look at the scars on that Patrat's back," Ghetsis might say, pointing to a rescued creature brought in for show, his voice dripping with feigned sorrow. "Humans did this. They steal our friends from their homes, force them to fight for glory, and abandon them when the thrill fades." You can almost hear the weight of those words sinking into N's young mind, can't you? Without any counterpoint, without a single human friend to demonstrate kindness or complexity, N internalized it all. He began to view the human world as a monolithic force of abuse, a place where Pokémon cried out for liberation. Ghetsis encouraged this, handing N leadership roles among the Plasma Grunt's Pokémon, letting him free them from mock battles staged to highlight human greed. N would stand tall in those simulated rescues, his voice steady as he declared, "You don't have to suffer anymore. I'll protect you from them." It was here that his naive crusade took root, a pure-hearted mission to separate humans and Pokémon entirely, to create a utopia where the innocent could thrive without fear. As N grew older, this worldview wasn't just abstract philosophy, it became his identity. He'd pace the castle's battlements at dawn, watching the distant Unova skyline, imagining a revolution where Pokémon roamed free and humans learned their place. Ghetsis nurtured this fire, positioning himself as the wise mentor, guiding N toward destiny. "You are special, my son," he'd say, his heterochromatic eyes gleaming with hidden intent. "Born to hear the voices they silence. One day, you'll lead them to peace." And N believed it, body and soul. His isolation had forged him into an idealist without peers, a boy who saw the world in black and white. Abusers versus the abused, with no grey areas to muddy the waters. Yet, beneath this carefully constructed facade, cracks began to form, though N couldn't see them yet. The Pokémon he bonded with whispered doubts in their own ways, a leopard's hesitant purr when asked about wildlife, a Bravuri's fierce gaze toward the horizon, as if longing for skies shared with trainers. But Ghetsis always intervened, redirecting with more stories of betrayal, more evidence of human malice. He even arranged for N to witness staged atrocities like a group of actors posing as ruthless poachers capturing wild Pokémon, only to rescue them in dramatic fashion. Each event reinforced the narrative. Humans were the enemy, and N was the saviour. This manipulation ran deep, touching every aspect of N's daily life. His meals were shared with Pokémon, emphasising their equality. His studies focused on Pokémon biology and mythology, ignoring human history altogether. Ghetsis controlled the castle's staff, ensuring they spoke to N only in reverent tones, never as equals. The result was a young man who emerged from his cage not broken, but brilliantly naive, ready to champion a cause that was never truly his own. N's crusade wasn't born of personal grudge. It was cultivated like a rare flower in a greenhouse. Beautiful but fragile, destined to wilt under real sunlight. And as N stepped into the wider world of Unova, armed with his Pokémon allies and unshakable convictions, he carried the weight of that upbringing like an invisible crown. He challenged trainers not out of malice, but out of a genuine belief that he was freeing their partners from bondage. Remember those encounters in the games? The way N would approach you, his expression a mix of sorrow and determination, saying things like, "Your Pokémon, do they truly wish to be with you?" It wasn't theatre, it was the echo of a lifetime spent in echoes of his own. But what if I told you this isolation was just the beginning of a deeper deception? Ghetsis' role as father wasn't what it seemed, and the revelation of that lie would shatter everything N held dear. It turned him from a wide-eyed liberator into something far more tragic, a pawn in a game of conquest where his ideals were the perfect weapon. How does a boy raised on lies confront the architect of his world? That's the heartbreak waiting in the shadows. As we peel back these layers, you'll see how N's pure heart became his greatest vulnerability. His bonds with Pokémon, like the legendary Zekrom, which he later sought as a symbol of truth, stemmed directly from those solitary years. Zekrom resonated with N's inner turmoil, a dragon of ideals mirroring the boy's quest for a harmonious world. Yet even in those moments of connection, the cage's bars lingered in his subconscious, making him question every human he met, delve deeper, and consider the psychological toll. Experts in Pokémon lore often draw parallels to real-world cases of isolated child rearing, where a single influence shapes an entire worldview. For N, Ghetsis was that influence. Charismatic, authoritative, and utterly ruthless. He didn't just teach N to hate humans, he taught him to pity them, to see them as redeemable only through separation. This fostered N's gentle demeanour, his reluctance to harm even in battle, always prioritising the Pokémon's well-being over victory. Examples abound in the game's subtext. Take the Plasma Parade in Accumula Town, where N speaks to the crowd about liberation. It's not bombast, it's the culmination of years hearing Ghetsis' rhetoric bounce off stone walls, or his interactions with wild Pokémon, calling them to his side effortlessly because in his mind they recognise a kindred spirit, untainted by human flaws. These moments pull at you, don't they? They make you root for N, even as his path veers toward chaos. Ghetsis' methods were insidious, blending affection with indoctrination. He'd gift N rare Pokémon, like a Volcarona whose flames lit up the castle's gloom, only to use it as a prop in lessons about exploitation. See how brightly it burns when free from trainers' commands? N would nod, his trust absolute. No human friends meant no one to whisper, but what if not all humans are like that? The absence created a void filled only by propaganda. This upbringing fueled N's naive crusade with relentless energy. By his teens, he was organising mock liberations within the castle, rescuing Pokémon from Ghetsis' own demonstrations of capture. Each success reinforced his role as the chosen one, blinding him to the grunt's smirks or the Pokémon's confused loyalty. It was a crusade built on sand, pure but precarious. Now, as we approach the turning point, imagine the moment truth cracks the facade. Getz's paternal deception wasn't mere omission. It was a calculated lie that positioned N as the figurehead for Team Plasma's true goal: domination under the guise of freedom. He wasn't raising a son, he was forging a tool, sharp and idealistic, perfect for conquest. But how does that revelation unfold? How does it dismantle the world N knew? Stick with me into Chapter 5, Betrayal and the Fall of N's Idealism, where the cage door finally swings open and the real tragedy crashes down like a thunderbolt. You won't want to miss the devastation that follows. Betrayal and the Fall of N's Idealism. In the world of Pokémon Black and White, one character stands out not as a hero or a villain, but as a tragic figure caught in the crossfire of manipulation and misplaced ideals. N, the self-proclaimed king of Team Plasma, believed he was fighting for freedom, but his entire life was a carefully orchestrated lie that would leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and betrayal. Let's step back for a moment and really grasp who N is. From the moment you first encounter him in the games, he's this enigmatic presence surrounded by legendary Pokémon like Zekrom, preaching a radical vision. He wants to liberate Pokémon from what he sees as human oppression, to create a world where they roam free without the chains of Pokeballs and battles. But here's the concrete truth that hits hard. N wasn't born into this role. He was molded into it, raised in isolation by a man who called himself his father, Ghetsis Harmonia. Picture a child, cut off from the world, his only, companions the voices of Pokémon that he could uniquely understand. Ghetsis fed him stories of abuse, of trainers who treated their partners like tools, twisting N's innate empathy into a weapon. You can almost hear the echoes of those lessons in N's speeches, can't you? They're passionate, almost poetic, but laced with a naivety that makes your heart ache, because you know, deep down, it's all built on sand. As the story unfolds in Unova, N rises to become the king of Team Plasma, an organisation that at first glance seems like a noble crusade. They storm through the region, staging dramatic liberations, convincing trainers to release their Pokémon under the guise of compassion. Remember those early moments in the game when Team Plasma grunts raid the Pokémon League or interrupt battles in a Cumula town? N is at the centre of it all. His green hair and that haunting melody he plays on his ocarina, symbolising his bond with the creatures he claims to protect. He challenges you, the player, not just to a fight, but to a philosophical showdown. Humans and Pokémon should live in harmony, without one dominating the other, he declares. And for a while, it almost makes sense. His actions escalate quickly. He assembles an army of Pokémon, including some of the most powerful ones, and pushes forward with a plan to reshape the world. In Black and White, this culminates in the release of countless Pokémon from their trainers' care, an event that feels revolutionary at the time. Castelia City, with its towering skyscrapers, becomes a stage for chaos as Plasma forces unleash Pokémon into the streets, claiming it's for their own good. You fight through it, battling N's lieutenants, but every victory feels hollow because N's conviction is so pure. He's not doing this for power, or so he thinks. He's doing it because he believes it's right, shaped by years of isolation where Ghetsis whispered that humans are the enemy. But what if I told you that this grand liberation was never about freedom at all? As you progress through the storyline, cracks start to appear in Team Plasma's facade. N's ideals clash with the grunt's greed, and you begin to sense that something deeper is at play. The real turning point, the one that shatters everything, comes during the climactic confrontation at N's castle. You've journeyed across Unova, From the wind-swept Drift Vale drawbridge to the ancient ruins of Dragon Spiral Tower, gathering badges and allies, all leading to this moment. N summons the legendary dragon Reshiram or Zekrom, depending on your version, and it resonates with his vision, creating a black or white castle that rises like a monument to his dream. He battles you there, a fight that's not just physical, but emotional, his team of Pokémon reflecting his fractured soul. Zoroark illusions, a majestic Volcarona, all fighting with a desperation that tugs at you. And then Ghetsis reveals himself, not as the benevolent father figure, but as the monster pulling the strings. In that throne room, with the castle crumbling around you, Ghetsis steps forward, his eye patch and sinister laugh exposing the truth. He confesses that Team Plasma's goal was never liberation, it was domination. The releases were a ploy to disarm trainers, to leave humans defenseless, while Plasma hoarded all the Pokémon for themselves. N was just the pawn, the charismatic frontman raised to spout ideals that Ghetsis never believed in. "You were useful, N, but now you're obsolete," Ghetsis sneers, his words like poison dripping into the air. Can you imagine the shock? N, who trusted Ghetsis implicitly, who saw him as the architect of his purpose, watches as his entire worldview crumbles. The man who isolated him, who taught him to hear Pokemon's cries of pain, did it all to exploit that gift. Ghetsis even tries to kill N right there, forcing a battle where Hydreigon unleashes chaos, but you intervene, saving N from the blade of betrayal. That moment of shattering trust isn't just a plot twist, it's the core of N's tragedy. He collapses, not from physical wounds, but from the realization that his life's mission was a lie. The Pokémon he freed, many were recaptured by Plasma for their own army. The harmony he sought, a fantasy Ghetsis used to manipulate him. You see it in N's eyes during the post-battle dialogue. Defeat, not just in the fight, but in his soul. He questions everything. His bonds with Pokémon, his place in the world, even his own identity. "I wanted to show the world my ideals," he says, voice breaking, "but now I see I was wrong." It's heartbreaking because N's intentions were good. He genuinely cared, raised with Pokémon as his only friends, playing in the gardens of his secluded castle, learning their languages while Ghetsis plotted in the shadows. That innocence, corrupted and discarded, leaves you feeling a profound sense of loss. How does someone recover from being the tool in their own father's scheme? In the aftermath, N's fall leads to a bittersweet exile. With the castle in ruins and Ghetsis defeated, for now, N chooses to leave Unova, wandering with his remaining Pokémon companions. It's not a triumphant escape, it's a quiet departure, a king stripped of his crown, seeking answers on his own terms. He rides off on Reshiram or Zekrom, the legendary dragon that once symbolized his ideals, now a reminder of his naivety. You can find him later in the games, in hidden areas like the Marvelous Bridge or post-game encounters, where he reflects on his journey. "I'm still learning about the world," he admits, a far cry from the confident king who once demanded revolution. This exile marks the beginning of his path to self-discovery, a pawn awakening to his own agency. No longer manipulated, N starts to question not just humans and Pokémon, but his role in their shared story. It's a journey fraught with loneliness, echoing the isolation of his childhood, but now with a spark of hope. He bonds deeper with his Pokémon, not as a liberator, but as an equal, travelling through regions unknown, piecing together a new truth. Think about what this means for the Pokémon world. N's story exposes the dark underbelly of ideals gone wrong, how charisma and conviction can blind even the purest heart. In Black and White 2, you see the ripple effects. Team Plasma splinters, Ghetsis returns more ruthless, but N is out there, changed, a shadow of his former self, yet growing. His theme music, that haunting flute melody, plays in your mind long after, a symbol of lost dreams. You might replay the games just to hear his final words again, to feel that pang of empathy for a character who wanted so much for the world but received only deception in return. Delving deeper, consider the psychological layers here. N's upbringing was a masterclass in grooming. Ghetsis didn't just raise him, he engineered him, surrounding him with abused Pokémon to reinforce the narrative of human cruelty. Remember the 7 sages? They were in on it, each representing a sin that twisted N's perceptions. But N's ability to communicate with Pokémon made him special, a bridge that Ghetsis exploited. When the betrayal hits, it's like ripping away the foundation of his reality. Psychologists might call it a form of gaslighting on an epic scale, leaving N with identity dissociation. He even doubts his own name. Natural Harmonia Gropius, a fabricated title fitting for a fabricated life. Yet, in his exile, there's redemption. He starts to see the bonds between trainers and Pokémon not as slavery, but as partnerships, much like the ones you form in the game. It's a slow burn, this self-discovery, but it humanizes him, turning tragedy into a tale of resilience. And let's not forget the gameplay ties that make it all so immersive. As you battle N multiple times, first in his castle, then in the Pokémon League finale, each encounter builds tension. His teams evolve with the story, from early game staples like Timpole to late game powerhouses like Vanillux, mirroring his growing confidence and eventual doubt. Post-game, when you meet him again, it's optional, a quiet epilogue that rewards exploration. You talk, battle once more, and he shares insights that challenge your own views. The truth is more complicated than black and white, he says, a meta-nod to the games themselves. It's these interactions that make N unforgettable, a character whose arc spans not just one playthrough, but multiple, urging you to revisit and reflect. What strikes me most is how N's fall resonates with real-world themes. We've all been betrayed by someone we trusted, had our beliefs upended. N embodies that universal pain, amplified through the Pokémon lens. His idealism, once a beacon, becomes a cautionary tale. Question your sources, seek truth beyond echoes. In exile, with his Pokémon by his side, he finds solace in the wilds, perhaps in far-off regions like Kalos or Alola, continuing his journey. It's bittersweet because while he's free from Ghetsis, he's forever marked by the manipulation. No grand redemption arc, just a quiet evolution from pawn to seeker. As we wrap up N's heartbreaking tale of betrayal and lost ideals, it leads us straight into another story of desperate longing and eternal sorrow. Up next in Chapter 6, Aizy's desperate quest for revival, you'll discover a king whose grief spans 3,000 years, all for the chance to bring back what he lost. A quest that unleashes unimaginable destruction and leaves you wondering if some losses are meant to stay buried. You won't want to miss how one man's unbreakable bond twists into the ultimate tragedy. Aizy's desperate quest for revival. In the heart of the Kalos region, where ancient kingdoms rose and fell amid battles that scarred the earth, one man's unbreakable bond with his Pokémon turned into the spark of unimaginable tragedy. 3,000 years ago, during the brutal Kalos War, a king named Aizy watched helplessly as his beloved Floette fell in combat. Its tiny body crumpling under the chaos of clashing armies and desperate Pokémon cries. You can almost hear the silence that followed, can't you? That Floette wasn't just a companion. It was his child in all but name, a fragile flower of life that had bloomed in his otherwise iron-clad world of conquest and strategy. AZ, a ruler hardened by years of warfare, had poured his soul into protecting it, training it not for glory, but for the simple joy of seeing its petals unfurl in peace. But war doesn't care about tenderness. One stray attack, one moment of vulnerability, and it was gone, leaving AZ clutching empty air where warmth once was. That loss didn't fade with time. No, it festered, twisting into a grief so profound it reshaped the very course of history. For centuries, AZ wandered the blood-soaked fields of Kalos, his crown heavy with regret rather than power. He was a king without a kingdom in his heart, replaying that final battle over and over in his mind. What if he'd shielded it better? What if he'd ended the war sooner? The questions gnawed at him, driving him to extremes no one else could fathom. Historians in the Pokémon world whisper about how he abandoned his throne, ignoring pleas from advisors and allies alike. His people needed a leader to rebuild, but AZ was lost to his odyssey, a 3,000-year journey not of exploration, but of relentless mourning. Imagine the weight of that, outliving everyone you ever knew, watching generations rise and fall while your pain stays as fresh as the day it began. It's the kind of sorrow that doesn't heal, it evolves, mutating into something darker, more desperate. As the years stretched into decades, then centuries, AZ's grief transformed him. He became a shadow of the warrior king, his once vibrant eyes dulled by an unquenchable thirst for reversal. Death, that final thief, had stolen his Floette, and he refused to let it win. You know how Pokémon lore often hints at the impossible, legendary beings bending reality, ancient artifacts defying nature? AZ didn't seek myths, he forged his own. Driven by a paternal anguish that blurred the lines between love and obsession, he turned to forbidden sciences, delving into the arcane knowledge of Kalos's lost technologies. Picture him in hidden laboratories, surrounded by glowing runes and humming machines, his hands trembling as he sketched blueprints that no ethical mind would touch. This wasn't the work of a madman in the stories we tell kids. It was the calculated desperation of a father who couldn't accept goodbye. And so, from the depths of that anguish, the ultimate weapon was born. Not as a tool of war, but as a machine of defiance, a colossal device powered by the life force of countless Pokémon, designed to unravel the threads of mortality itself. AZ envisioned it as salvation, a way to pull his Floette back from the void, to revive what death had claimed. He scavenged rare ores from the deepest caves, harnessed the energy of legendary Pokémon in secret rituals, and wove in elements of ancient Floette lore, believing its flower-like essence held the key to renewal. The weapon wasn't just metal and circuits, it was an extension of his broken heart, a forbidden creation that promised to rewrite fate. Whispers among Kalos scholars suggest he tested smaller prototypes first, devices that briefly echoed the voices of the departed, flickering illusions of lost loved ones. Each success only fueled his fire, but the failures? They left scars, both on the land and on his soul, as experimental energies warped the environment around him, twisting trees into grotesque shapes and silencing Pokémon cries forever. But here's where the tragedy deepens, because AZ's quest wasn't solitary. His wife, the queen who had shared his burdens, tried to pull him back from the edge. She saw the monster his grief was birthing, the way his eyes lit up not with hope, but with a feverish gleam that scared even her. In one poignant tale passed down through Kalos folklore, she confronted him in the weapons chamber, her voice breaking as she begged him to let go. "Our child is gone," she said, tears streaming, "but this will take everything else too." AZ, lost in his calculations, barely heard her. His paternal drive had consumed him, turning love into a weapon, sharper than any sword from the war. She left him that night, her own heart shattered, and history records her fading into obscurity. perhaps wandering the same paths he would later tread alone. It's moments like these that make Pokémon lore hit so hard. You start with a simple loss, and it ripples out, claiming innocence in its wake. As the ultimate weapon neared completion, AZ's isolation grew. Allies from the war, those who'd fought beside him, turned away, sensing the darkness in his plans. Even Pokémon shunned his presence, their instincts warning of the unnatural power he was unleashing. Yet he pressed, on, night after sleepless night, etching final inscriptions into the machine's core. The device stood like a titan in his hidden fortress, its surface etched with symbols of revival, petals and roots intertwined with gears and flames. It required immense power, drawn from the vitality of the world itself, a battery of life that AZ justified in his mind as necessary sacrifice. For one life, he must have told himself, I'll give the world a chance at eternity. But you and I know better. Desperation blinds us to the cost. The weapon hummed to life in test phases, sending pulses that made the ground tremble and the sky flicker with unnatural light. Birds fled, rivers ran backward, and AZ smiled for the first time in ages, convinced he was on the cusp of reunion. Finally, after eons of preparation, the moment arrived. AZ activated the ultimate weapon in a bid to shatter death's finality, pouring every ounce of his remaining humanity into the command. The machine roared, its core igniting with a brilliance that outshone the sun, drawing in the essence of life across Kalos and beyond. Pokémon from forests, oceans and mountains felt the pull, their energies siphoned into the vortex. The air crackled with raw power, and for a heartbeat, AZ thought he saw it. His floet's form shimmering in the light, petals intact, eyes bright with recognition. But revival doesn't come cheap. The weapon didn't just bring back one soul, it unleashed a cataclysm, wiping out life in waves of destructive force. Cities crumbled, armies vanished, and the war that had taken his floet ended not in victory, but in annihilation. The ground split open, swallowing battalions whole, while skies darkened with storms born of stolen vitality. What was meant to defy death instead became its greatest amplifier, erasing generations in an instant. You have to pause here and let that sink in. AZ stood amid the ruins, the weapon's glow fading to reveal a world forever altered. His quest for revival had succeeded in part. Life ebbed and flowed unnaturally. But at what price? The Kalos he knew was gone, reduced to echoes and ash, all because one man's grief demanded the impossible. It's a stark reminder of how Pokémon stories weave human frailty into their fabric, showing us that even kings can crumble under loss. And as the dust settled, AZ's odyssey took a darker turn, one that would define him for millennia. But wait until you hear what happened next, when rejection struck and turned him into the eternal wanderer we'll explore in the upcoming chapter. Rejection and eternal wanderer. How could something so pure lead to endless isolation? Stick around, it's going to break your heart even more. Now let's dive deeper into the layers of this tale, because AZ's story isn't just a quick tragedy, it's a masterclass in how Pokémon lore builds emotional depth through historical echoes. Think about the Kalos War itself. It wasn't some abstract conflict. Legends describe it as a clash. Between kingdoms vying for control of ancient energies, Pokémon pushed to their limits as living weapons. AZ, as a central figure, had risen through the ranks by treating his floet as more than a battler. It was his confidant, the one pure thing in a sea of ambition. Eyewitness accounts, preserved in crumbling Kalos texts, paint him as a tactical genius, but one who always pulled back for his companion's sake. When that final blow landed, it wasn't just physical, it severed his last tie to innocence. He cradled its broken form, petals wilting in his hands, and in that instant, the war's roar faded to a personal dirge. That grief's odyssey spanned not just years, but eras. AZ outlived dynasties, watching Carlos rebuild only to fracture again. He wandered from Lumios's precursors to forgotten ruins, seeking sages who might know revival secrets. Some say he consulted with what would become the fairy type's origins, drawing on floral essences that mirrored Floette's nature. But each dead end deepened the wound. By the time he began the weapon's invention, he was a ghost among the living, his anguish paternal in its intensity, like a father inventing time travel to save a child from illness, blind to the paradoxes. The machine's design drew from multiple forbidden arts, alchemical fusions of steel and spirit, inspired by real Pokémon like Klefki guarding lost keys to power, or Carbink's crystalline durability. AZ even incorporated Floette's own moveset into the schematics. Fairy winds to channel energy, petal dances to symbolise rebirth. It was poetic, heartbreakingly so. A machine born not of hate, but of love, twisted by loss. The activation's catastrophe unfolded in phases that lore-keepers still debate. First came the surge, a wave that revived flora across the land, unnaturally, flowers blooming in barren soil as if mocking AZ's pain. Then the backlash, life forces recoiling, causing Pokémon to mutate or fade into ether. Human casualties were immense. Entire legions from the war simply ceased, their essences fueling the weapon's core. AZ, standing at the controls, felt the power course through him, a euphoric rush mingled with dread. For a split second, he believed his Floette's cry echoed, faint but real. But the wipeout was total. A reset button slammed too hard. The weapon's energy feedback loop destabilized, scorching the earth and altering the region's very aura. Some say that's why Kalos feels eternally elegant, yet haunted, a beauty built on buried sorrow. This event reshaped Pokémon society too. Survivors spoke of AZ as a cautionary figure, the king who played God and lost. His quest highlighted the dangers of tampering with life-death boundaries, themes that echo in later legends, like the life and death duo, Hooper and the Rings of Reality. Yet AZ didn't stop there. His desperation evolved, leading to pursuits that would only amplify the isolation. You feel it, don't you? The pull of what comes next, when that revival attempt faces its ultimate test, in rejection and eternal wanderer, will uncover how Floette's response sealed his fate, turning grief into an unending exile that spans the ages. It's the kind of twist that makes you question everything about bonds in the Pokémon world. Trust me, you won't see it coming. To really grasp the emotional core, consider AZ's internal monologue, pieced together from fragmented diaries unearthed in Kalos excavations. He wrote of nights where he'd summon illusions of Floette using primitive tech, talking to holograms as if they could answer. "My flower," he'd murmur, "I'll bring you back, no matter the storm." That paternal anguish wasn't abstract, it was visceral, rooted in the war's orphaning effect. AZ had lost family before, but Floette was the last thread. The weapon's invention became his legacy, a machine so advanced it influenced modern tech like the Pokeball's capture mechanics, albeit sanitized. But the forbidden aspect, it tapped into dark energies, perhaps even shadows of what Giratina guards in the distortion world, pulling life from one realm to another. When activation hit, the catastrophe wasn't instant apocalypse, but a slow unraveling. Reports describe Pokémon herds stampeding in panic, their life forces visibly draining like rivers to the sea. AZ watched, torn between triumph and terror, as the weapon's beams pierced the heavens, attempting to reverse entropy itself. Wiping out life was the unintended cost. Death defied so aggressively, it overcorrected, erasing the present to chase the past. In the aftermath, Carlos lay in ruins, a testament to unchecked grief. AZ's quest meant for revival instead immortalized loss on a global scale. It's why this story ranks among Pokemon's most tragic. It shows how one Pokemon's death can doom a world. And as we edge toward the fallout, prepare yourself for the rejection that follows. In the next chapter, Rejection and Eternal Wanderer, AZ's world crumbles further in ways that will leave you reeling, questioning the price of eternal love. What happens when the revived turns away? You have to hear it to believe it. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Rejection and Eternal Wanderer. What if the greatest act of love in Pokémon history ended up as the ultimate betrayal, leaving one man cursed to walk the earth alone for millennia? That's the shattering reality for AZ, the ancient king of Kalos whose story we've been unraveling. You see, after pouring his grief into that catastrophic ultimate weapon, AZ finally achieved the impossible. He brought his beloved Floette back from the dead. But victory? Far from it. What happened next would seal his fate in ways that echo through time, turning a father's desperation into an endless nightmare. Let's rewind just a bit to set the stage, because you need to feel the weight of this moment. AZ had lost everything in the war that ravaged Kalos 3,000 years ago. His son, a Pokémon trainer, caught in the crossfire, gone forever. And Floette, that tiny flower-wielding fairy Pokémon, who had been his son's loyal companion, perished trying to heal the wounded on the battlefield. AZ's world crumbled. He wasn't just a king, he was a man unhinged by sorrow, scavenging the lands for ancient tech, cobbling together a device powered by the life force of countless Pokémon. The ultimate weapon wasn't born from ambition, it was forged in the fires of a broken heart. When he fired it, not once but twice, it didn't just end the war, it drained the vitality from the earth itself, leaving scars that modern trainers still stumble upon in the wilds of Kalos. But here's where the real tragedy ignites. Against all odds, the weapon's energy coalesced and Floette returned. In your mind's eye, a fragile, ethereal form materializing amid the ruins, petals fluttering like a hesitant heartbeat. AZ must have fallen to his knees, tears streaming, reaching out for the embrace he'd dreamed of for years. Floette, he'd whisper, voice cracking with hope. My Floette. For a split second, the world rights itself. The king, the inventor, the widower of loss. He's whole again. Or so he thought, because Floette didn't rush into his arms. No joyful reunion, no nuzzle against his cheek. Instead, those innocent eyes widened in horror. The little Pokémon recoiled, trembling as if gazing upon a monster. Why, you'd think resurrection would bind them closer. Right. But Floette had seen it all. The slaughter, the weapon's glow devouring lives, the Pokémon sacrificed on the altar of Azar's vengeance. In that pure, unfiltered Pokémon heart, AZ wasn't a saviour anymore. He was the architect of the horror that had torn their family apart. Floette fled, vanishing into the shadows of the war-torn landscape, leaving AZ utterly, profoundly alone. Can you imagine that rejection? It's not just losing someone again, it's them choosing to run from you, horrified by what you've become. AZ's isolation deepened into something suffocating, a void that no crown or kingdom could fill. He wandered the aftermath of the battle, calling out for Floette day after day, but the Pokémon was gone, perhaps seeking solace in the wilds or hiding from the man who'd twisted love into destruction. Friends? They were dead or scattered. Allies? Betrayed by the very weapon meant to protect them. AZ became a ghost in his own life, haunting the ruins of Carlos, his mind replaying that moment of recoil over and over. Every petal on the wind, every fairy-type cry, it mocked him, a reminder of the bond he'd shattered. But the story doesn't end with that heartbreak. No, Pokémon lore loves to twist the knife, and AZ's curse was just beginning. You know how legends speak of immortals in myths? Well, in building the ultimate weapon, AZ didn't just harness energy, he bound it to himself. The life force he siphoned, the eternal power he unleashed, it backlashed. He became unkillable, ageless, doomed to persist while everyone around him withered and died. Think about that for a second. A man who craved reunion now outlives every soul he ever meets. Friends age and fade, lovers turn to dust, even the landscapes shift without him. AZ is the eternal wanderer, a figure whispered about in Colossian folklore, drifting from era to era like a shadow no one can catch. Imagine him in the centuries following the war. Kalos rebuilds, cities rise from the ashes, but AZ trudges on, his armour rusted, his eyes hollow. He sees the first human settlements sprout, watches as Pokémon and trainers form the bonds he once knew. Yet, he's apart from it all, a relic of regret. By the time of the medieval ages in the Pokémon world, he's a myth, the mad king who ended a war but lost his soul. Sailors tell tales of a cloaked figure on the cliffs, staring at the sea as if waiting for a flower to bloom on the waves. And in the industrial boom, when machines start mimicking his ancient tech, does he intervene? Or does he just pass through, invisible, his immortality, a prison of solitude? This wandering isn't glamorous adventure, it's torment. AZ crosses deserts that swallow caravans, forests that reclaim old battlefields, and oceans that carry him to distant regions. He's seen the rise and fall of empires, the evolution of Pokémon species, even the birth of legendary beings like Xerneas and Yveltal, the very life and death duo tied to his weapon's legacy. But connection? Elusive. He tries, doesn't he? In the games you catch glimpses, a trainer in Lumio City who speaks of an old man with a mechanical Floette keychain, or wanderers in the Pokémon village who swear they've seen a figure feeding orphaned Pokémon at dusk. Yet each attempt at normalcy crumbles. People age, he doesn't. They forget, he remembers every loss acutely. And that Floette, the rejection lingers like an open wound. Aza carries a model of her on his wrist, a mechanical echo, but it's cold comfort. He searches eternally, crossing eras in hopes she'll return. Forgive, understand, but she never does. Some lore suggests she evolved into Florges, hidden in some sacred garden, still bearing the scars of war. Others say her spirit haunts the fairy-type groves, a poignant reminder. Either way, AZ's immortality amplifies the pain. Time doesn't heal, it stretches the agony across millennia. Now fast forward to our modern Kalos, the one you explore in Pokémon X and Y. AZ's story isn't buried in the past, it pulses through the region's very soul. That ultimate weapon? It's the Geoquake, the roots of the ultimate crisis Lysandra unleashes. AZ appears in the games as this enigmatic elder, intervening not out of heroism, but because he recognizes the cycle of destruction repeating. He stops the weapons, reactivation, but look at his face, it's not triumph, it's weary resignation, the eternal wanderer stepping in, because no one else remembers the cost. His pain echoes in the Pokémon battles you wage today. Ever notice how Carlos emphasizes themes of life, death, and revival? The legendary Pokémon Xerneas revives the fallen. Yveltal drains life, mirrors of AZ's weapon. Trainers in Laver City talk of fairy tales where a king mourns forever. And in the Pokémon village, abandoned Mons huddle, much like AZ's unspoken isolation. Even the mega evolutions, that burst of power, hint at the unchecked ambition that birthed his curse. You battle with your team, feeling the thrill, but beneath it, AZ's grief lingers. A cautionary tale. What if your strongest bond, pushed too far, breaks you instead? Think about the trainers you meet, those kids chasing badges with wide-eyed dreams. AZ has watched generations like them rise and fall. He's seen the joy of a first capture turn to loss, the evolution of friendship into something unbreakable or shattered. In quiet moments, like staring at the Prism Tower's lights, you might wonder, is he out there still, wandering the routes, a silent witness? His immortality means Kalos carries his burden collectively. Wars averted, but at what price? The region's beauty hides that undercurrent of sorrow, making every victory bittersweet. And it's not just lore fluff, it shapes how we play. AZ's model Floette becomes a key item, a symbol you carry, reminding you of rejection's sting. Defeating him in battle? It's not conquest, it's confronting a man who's lost everything, yet persists. His dialogue hits hard, regrets voiced in fragments, a king reduced to echoes. You walk away changed, pondering if your own journey flirts with similar edges, pushing Pokémon too far for glory, risking the bonds that define us. This eternal wandering bleeds into fan theories too, doesn't it? Some say AZ influenced the creation of Pokeballs, his mechanical genius lingering in the tech we take for granted. Others speculate he's crossed to other regions, Galar's crown tundra perhaps, drawn by tales of ancient kings. But Kalos remains his anchor, the land of his fall, an unyielding rise. His isolation deepens with every era, a man cursed to observe life's fleeting joys without partaking. Rejection from Floette wasn't the end, it was the spark that ignited his endless path. You have to feel for him, right? In a world of heroic champions and legendary triumphs, AZ stands as the anti-hero of loss, his story a mirror to our own fears of abandonment and regret. What would you do holding that mechanical flower, wandering alone as centuries blur? It's the kind of depth that makes Pokémon more than a game. It's a tapestry of human frailty, woven with mythical wonder. But if AZ's immortality shows us the horror of outliving love, wait until you hear about the Pokémon that carry the faces of their former lives, weeping for what they've lost. Up next, in Chapter 8, Yamask's haunting human echoes will dive into tears that no mask can hide, stories so eerie they'll make you question every shadow in the ghost-type gyms. You won't want to miss how these spirits bridge the worlds of the living and the forgotten. Yamask's haunting human echoes. What if I told you that one of the most sorrowful Pokémon in the entire Pokédex isn't just a ghost type drifting through shadows, but a direct remnant of a human soul, forever trapped in a cycle of mourning its own lost life? That's the chilling reality of Yamasking, a creature born from the echoes of the deceased, carrying the very face it once wore as a person. In the vast lore of Pokémon, few stories hit as hard as this one, blending the line between life, death, and the unbreakable ties of memory. Let's dive right into how this all begins. Yamask doesn't just appear out of thin air like some spectral prankster. According to the deepest Pokédex entries and regional myths, these Pokémon originate from humans who have passed away under circumstances shrouded in tragedy. Perhaps untimely accidents, forgotten in the annals of history, or simply the quiet fade of old age in a world that moves on too quickly. When death claims them, their spirits don't ascend or vanish. Instead, They reform into these small, ethereal beings, cloaked in a golden, mask-like aura. But the most haunting part? Each Yamask clutches a porcelain mask that's an exact replica of their human face from life. It's not some generic prop, it's personal, a frozen snapshot of who they were, with every wrinkle, smile line, or scar etched in eternal detail. Imagine holding a mirror to your past self, but one that never changes, never ages, and stares back with eyes that know your every secret. You might be wondering, why would a spirit need such a reminder? Well, it's because Yamask's existence is defined by that mask. They wander the ruins, the abandoned temples, or the misty graveyards of regions like Hunava, where the veil between worlds feels thinnest. These aren't aggressive ghosts seeking revenge. They're quiet mourners, drifting aimlessly until something pulls them back to their humanity. And that's where the real tragedy unfolds. When a Yamask gazes upon its mask, holding it up like a cherished photograph or a locket from a bygone era, it triggers a flood of memories from its mortal days. Laughter with family around a dinner table, the warmth of a first love, the sting of failures long buried. These aren't vague flashes, they're vivid relivings, as if the Pokémon is stepping back into its own skin for a fleeting moment. In your mind, a lone Yamask in the dim glow of a moonlit cavern, its tiny hands trembling as it lifts the mask to what passes for its face. At first there's a pause, a hush that falls over the air, heavy with anticipation. Then the weeping starts. Not loud sobs, but soft, incessant tears that stream down its ghostly form, pooling at its feet, like liquid regret. Each drop is said to carry a piece of that relived memory, a fragment of emotion so potent it manifests physically. Trainers who've encountered them in the wild describe it as eerie, almost intimate, like stumbling upon a private funeral. The Yamask doesn't notice you at first. It's lost in its ritual, reliving joys that now twist into pain because they're forever out of reach. Why does it weep? Because those memories remind it of everything it can never have again. Touch, taste, the simple act of breathing without the weight of eternity. This weeping isn't random or pointless. It's a core part of Yamask's spectral existence, a ritual that binds its ghostly form to the humanity it left behind. In some ancient texts from the Pokémon world, scholars speculate that these tears serve as a way to purge the overload of emotions, preventing the spirit from shattering entirely under the burden. But here's where it gets even more heartbreaking. Each tear isn't just water from some otherworldly source. No, it's a fragment of lost humanity itself, distilled into sorrow that blends seamlessly with the Pokémon's ethereal body. Think about that for a second. Every time Yamask cries, it's shedding pieces of its former self, like leaves falling from a tree in autumn, knowing spring won't come. This fusion of grief and ghostliness creates a being that's neither fully human nor fully Pokémon, caught in limbo, where sorrow fuels its very survival. To really grasp the depth of Yamask's tragedy, consider how this plays out in battles or everyday encounters. Unlike your typical ghost types that thrive on fear or mischief, Yamask fights with a subdued ferocity, its moves like Shadow Sneak or Will-O-Wisp, carrying an undercurrent of desperation. It's as if, in the heat of conflict, it's trying to reclaim some agency over the life it lost. Trainers who bond with Yamask often share stories of late-night vigils where their partner Pokémon pulls out its mask unprompted, leading to hours of quiet tears. One famous anecdote from a Unova folklore collector recounts finding a Yamask in the Celestial Tower, a place known for housing spirits. The creature was weeping so profusely that its tears formed a small puddle, and when the collector approached, the mask reflected not just the Yamask's face, but fleeting images of a long-lost village, people waving goodbye as if boarding a ship that never returned. It was a sailor, perhaps, drowned at sea, now adrift in a different kind of ocean. But let's expand on this transformation process, because it's not instantaneous or clean. It's a slow unravelling that mirrors the decay of memory itself. When a human dies, their spirit lingers, tethered by unfinished business or sheer unwillingness to let go. Over time, influenced by the energies of the Pokémon world, maybe the pull of legendary beings like Giratina or the ambient magic in places like the Giant Chasm, the soul coalesces into Yamask's form. The mask forms, last sculpted from the essence of their final moments, capturing the expression they wore in death. Was it fear, peace, regret? That face becomes their anchor, but also their curse. Without it, Yamask might forget entirely, dissolving into oblivion. With it, they're doomed to repeat the cycle of remembrance and release. This duality makes Yamask one of the most empathetic Pokémon you'll ever encounter. You see, in a universe where creatures like Pikachu embody joy and strength, Yamask represents the quiet ache of what we've all lost at some point, a loved one, a piece of ourselves, the innocence of youth. It's why capturing one feels less like conquest and more like offering solace. Imagine training with a Yamask. You'd have to respect its rituals, perhaps even participate by sitting silently as it weeps, sharing in the grief to build trust. Evolving it into Cofagrigus later on shifts things. That ancient sarcophagus form suggests a burial of sorts, where the mask is enshrined and the tears perhaps turn to protective curses. But even then, the sorrow lingers, a guardian born from mourning. Delving deeper into the lore, there are whispers in Pokémon society about Yamask swarms haunting old battlefields or plague-ridden towns, each one a testament to collective human tragedy. In the games like Black and White, you can find them in places like the Abyssal Ruins, submerged relics that echo with the past. It's no coincidence. These locations are steeped in history, where lives were cut short en masse. A single Yamask might relive a soldier's last stand, tears falling as cannon fire echoes in its mind. Or a child's final playful moment before illness claimed them, the mask showing chubby cheeks frozen in laughter. These stories aren't just flavour text, they're invitations to ponder our own mortality. What mask would you carry? What memories would bring you to tears in the afterlife? And let's not overlook the emotional toll on those who interact with Yamask. Gym leaders in Unova, like those dealing with ghost types, warn new trainers about the psychological weight. One battle might end with your Pokémon victorious, but the Yamask opponent curls up afterward, mask clutched tight, weeping not from defeat, but from the fresh stab of recalled pain. It's a reminder that in Pokémon, victory isn't always triumphant. Sometimes it's bittersweet, laced with the ghosts we all carry inside. This is what makes Yamask's story so profoundly tragic. It's not about monstrous origins or villainous plots, but the universal human experience of loss, repackaged in a form that's both alien and achingly familiar. As we peel back these layers, the revelation hits hardest. Those tears, each glistening drop, aren't mere sadness. They're fragments of lost humanity, tiny shards of soul that blend sorrow directly into the spectral existence of Yamask. With every weep, the Pokémon reinforces its ghostly state, sorrow becoming the glue that holds its form together. It's a beautiful, devastating paradox, grief as both destroyer and preserver. Without the tears, the memories fade, and the human echo diminishes. With them, the pain endures, an eternal loop that defines its being. You can't help but feel a pang of sympathy, wondering if there's a way to break the cycle, to let these spirits find peace beyond the mask. In exploring Yamask, we're touching on themes that resonate far beyond the Pokédex: identity, remembrance, the fear of being forgotten. It's a story that lingers, much like the Pokémon itself, prompting you to look closer at the shadows in your next playthrough. But if Yamask's human echoes leave you chilled, wait until you hear about the innocent spirits that haunt the woods, forever searching for paths home. Up next, in Chapter 9, Phantump's Forest, Spirits of the Lost will uncover how the cries of vanished children give rise to tree-bound ghosts, blending innocence with an unending search that tugs at the heartstrings in ways you won't expect. Phantump's Forest, Spirits of the Lost. Did you know that in the shadowy depths of Pokemon's forests, some of the cutest little ghosts are born from the most unimaginable sorrow? Phantump, that whimsical tree stump spirit with its glowing eyes and playful waddle, isn't just another adorable addition to your team. No, its story roots deep into tragedy, pulling you into a world where innocence and loss collide in the most heartbreaking way. Let's start at the beginning, because understanding Phantump means facing the chilling truth behind its existence. According to the lore from the Pokémon games, particularly highlighted in entries like X and Y, Phantump emerges when a young child wanders too far into the woods and tragically perishes. Picture a kid, maybe out on an adventure, chasing fireflies or exploring hidden paths, but the forest turns unforgiving. Fog rolls in, paths twist, and before anyone realizes, that child is gone forever. Their spirit, restless and confused, doesn't simply fade away. Instead, it seeks solace, merging with the nearest tree stump, that weathered remnant of a once mighty tree, now hollowed by time and elements. The child's essence infuses the wood, animating it into this small spectral being. It's like the forest itself is trying to cradle the lost soul, giving it a new form to wander in. But here's what gets me. Phantump doesn't remember its human life clearly. It just knows an ache, a pull towards something missing, and that stump body becomes its eternal home, creaking softly as it drifts through the underbrush. You might be thinking, wait, how does something so pure come from such darkness? That's the genius of Phantump's design. On the surface, these little guys are all about innocent playfulness. They bob along like mischievous sprites, hiding behind trees to startle passers-by, or rustling leaves to mimic whispers in the wind. Trainers often encounter them in foggy groves where they'll peek out with those wide, luminous eyes almost begging to be caught for a life of battles and badges. There's a lightness to them, a childlike curiosity that makes you smile. They'll float around your camp at night, not to scare, but to join in games, their tiny branches waving like they're reaching for a hug. But peel back that facade, and you uncover the tragedy it's masking. Every giggle, every playful bump against your leg is shadowed by the origin of a life cut short. That stump isn't just a cute disguise, it's a grave marker, a wooden tomb for a child who never made it home. Phantump's eternal search for family drives its every movement. It wanders the woods, calling out in faint, echoing cries that sound like distant children's laughter, hoping to find siblings or parents who aren't coming. It's forever lost, replaying the moment of separation in loops of confusion and longing. I remember the first time I learned this in the games, stumbling upon a Phantump in the wild. It seemed so harmless, so endearing, but then the Pokédex entry hit me like a cold gust. These Pokémon are created when children vanish in the woods. The spirits get lost in the forest and create Phantump, it says, matter of fact, but loaded with pain. You start to see the forest differently after that. Every rustle of branches, every unexplained shadow could be a Phantump yearning for connection. And it's not just one. They often travel in groups, drawn together by shared loss, forming loose packs that mimic the play of lost siblings. Imagine a cluster of them, stumps rolling like tumbleweeds, their eyes flickering in unison as they chase fireflies or mimic animal calls. It's adorable until you realise they're not playing for fun. They're searching, always searching, filling the void with make-believe families that can never be real. This tragedy deepens when you consider how Phantump interacts with the world around it. They're drawn to humans, especially children, not out of malice, but a desperate hope for recognition. In some fan theories backed by game lore, Phantump will follow young trainers, latching onto them as surrogate family. But that bond is fragile. If you abandon a Phantump or trade it away carelessly, it might retreat deeper into the woods, its playful demeanour cracking into something more melancholic. There are stories in the Pokémon anime and manga where Phantump haunt old forests, leading lost kids astray, not to harm, but to keep them company in isolation, as if saying, "You're not alone in this." It's a double-edged sword. Their presence can comfort, but it also reminds you of the peril lurking in those same woods. Have you ever hiked in a real forest and felt that eerie quiet? Now imagine it's filled with these spirits, each one an echo of what could have been. As Phantump grows and evolves, the story takes an even more poignant turn. When it reaches level 36 or trades with the stone in certain games, it transforms into Trevenant, a towering tree guardian that shifts the narrative from lost child to fierce protector. This evolution isn't just a power-up, it's a revelation of purpose born from unresolved grief. Trevenant stands tall, its bark-like body forming a haunted tree with roots that grip the earth like desperate hands. No longer aimless, it becomes a sentinel of the forest, watching over the woods where it and countless others first arose. The lore explains that Trevenant protects the spirits of the departed, ensuring no more children suffer the same fate. Its branches sway with authority, and it can possess entire trees, making the forest come alive to ward off intruders. But beneath that guardianship lies the same tragedy. Every swing of its limbs, every rumble of its voice, stems from the pain of those child deaths that never found closure. Think about it. Phantump's innocence evolves into Trevenant's duty, but the searching never fully ends. Trevenant might patrol the paths, scaring away dangers with ghostly howls, but deep in its core, that stump heart still yearns for the family it lost. In battles, Trevenant unleashes moves like Phantom Force or Horn Leech, drawing life from the earth to sustain itself, almost as if it's clinging to the vitality it was denied in death. Trainers who raise one often describe a bond that's profoundly emotional. Your Trevenant will stand between you and harm, its eyes glowing with a mix of protectiveness and sorrow. It's like it's saying, "I couldn't save myself, but I'll save you." This evolution arc turns Phantump's story into a full cycle of loss and redemption, showing how tragedy can forge something enduring. To really drive this home, let's look at how Phantump fits into the broader Pokémon world. In regions like Kalos, where ancient forests teem with mystery, Phantump sightings spike near old ruins or forgotten trails, places where history whispers of disappearances. Game Freak even ties them to real-world folklore, like the spirits of Japanese Yurei or Celtic tree guardians, blending myth with Pokémon's universe. You can catch a glimpse of this in Pokémon Sun and Moon's Alolan forms, though Phantump remains unchanged, its tragedy universal. And in competitive play, people overlook it for flashier ghosts, but a well-trained Phantump line can surprise with utility, using Will-O-Wisp to burn foes or Forest's Curse to twist battles. Yet every time you command one, you're commanding a piece of that eternal wanderer. But let's get personal for a second. If you've ever lost someone close, or even felt that pang of being truly alone, Phantump's lore hits differently. It's not just a Pokémon, it's a reminder that even in loss there's a spark of playfulness, a refusal to let darkness win completely. These spirits teach us to cherish the wanderers in our lives, to hold family tight, because the woods, literal or metaphorical, can swallow us whole. And for trainers, raising a phantom means giving that lost soul a new purpose, a team to call home. It's bittersweet, isn't it? You level it up, watch it evolve, and in doing so, you heal a fragment of that ancient wound. Expanding on this, consider the environmental angle. Phantump and Trevenant embody the forest's dual nature, nurturing yet perilous. In a world where Pokémon lore often touches on harmony between humans and nature, these guys highlight the cost of straying too far. Deforestation in the games, it scatters Phantump, leaving them more vulnerable, their stumps uprooted like fresh graves. Conservation efforts by characters like those in Pokémon Ranger tie into this, with Trevenant allying to regrow woods, protecting future spirits from forming. It's a subtle nod to real issues, making you think twice about that next adventure. In the anime, episodes featuring Phantump amplify the emotion. Remember that one, where Ash encounters a group led by a Trevenant? They guide him through a haunted thicket, revealing backstories of vanished kids through flashbacks that tug at your heartstrings. The voice acting captures it perfectly. The soft, echoing calls of Phantump, contrasting with Trevenant's deep, rumbling warnings. It's moments like these that make you pause the episode, reflect on the innocence buried under the cute design. Diving deeper into mechanics, Phantump's ghost grass typing gives it unique strengths. Immune to normal moves, weak to fire that could symbolize the burning regret of loss. Its ability, Natural Cure, heals status ailments upon switching out, like shaking off the fog of confusion. But strategically, it's the evolution that shines. Trevenant boasting high attack for sweeping teams. Pair it with items like Leftovers for sustainability, mirroring how it draws from the forest to endure. Yet for all its depth, Phantump's core remains that tragic birth. A child spirit, adrift and merging with wood. Forever playful, yet forever searching. It challenges you. In a game of friends and fights, what do you do with the lost ones? You be their family, their guardian. And as we wrap up this chapter on these forest spirits, you can feel the weight of their story settling in. But hold on, because the tragedy doesn't stop here. Up next in our countdown, we dive into Chapter 10, Burnett's Vengeful Doll Awakening, where abandonment turns a forgotten toy into a nightmare of revenge. What happens when a child's plaything comes back haunted by betrayal? You won't want to miss how this puppet pulls at the strings of pure heartbreak. Burnett's Vengeful Doll Awakening. What if I told you that one of the creepiest Pokémon in the Pokédex started its existence not in some ancient myth or cosmic battle, but as a simple child's plaything, tossed aside like yesterday's trash? That's the raw truth behind Burnett, the marionette Pokémon whose stitched-up grin hides a storm of betrayal and unbreakable fury. At its core, Burnett isn't born from shadows or spirits. It's forged from the pain of abandonment. A fabric heart pulsing with the kind of resentment that could make even the toughest trainer pause. Let's dive right into how this all begins. Picture a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, clutching her favourite doll during those long rainy afternoons. This doll isn't just any toy, it's her constant companion, dressed in a tattered purple gown, with button eyes that seem to follow her every move, and a zipper mouth that she swears whispers secrets back. She names it something sweet, like Bella or Mimi, and they share everything. Tea parties in the attic, bedtime stories under the covers, even silly adventures where the doll defeats imaginary monsters. But kids grow up fast, don't they? Interests shift, new toys arrive, shinier and more exciting. One day, without a second thought, that doll ends up in a box headed for the dumpster, replaced by video games or school friends. Forgotten, unloved. The ultimate betrayal from the one being it trusted most. You know, It's that moment of discard that flips the switch for Burnett's origin. Deep in some forgotten alley or overgrown junkyard, the doll lies there, rain soaking through its stuffing, threads unravelling like broken promises. Days turn to weeks, and something festers inside, not just decay but a raw, boiling hatred. This isn't some gentle spirit possession. It's the doll's own suppressed emotions, bottled up from years of unwavering loyalty, now erupting into life. The fabric twitches, the zipper mouth curls into a perpetual scowl. Hatred animates every stitch, every loose seam, turning a lifeless toy into a vengeful entity. In the Pokédex entries, it's described as wandering the darkness, searching for the child who cast it away, its body a patchwork of rage that defies its floppy origins. But why does it hurt so much? Because toys like this are designed to love unconditionally, without question. When that love is thrown back in their face, it warps into something monstrous, a ghost-type Pokémon, driven by the ghost of its own shattered innocence. Now, here's where the story gets really chilling. Once awakened, Burnett doesn't just sulk in the shadows, it embarks on a relentless quest for revenge. This isn't blind destruction, it's personal, calculated, like a scorned lover plotting in the dead of night. Burnett slips into homes under the cover of darkness, its lightweight body making it silent as a whisper. It finds old photographs, maybe a forgotten toy box, piecing together clues about its former owner. And then the curses begin. With needles that materialize from its own cursed energy, Burnett stitches hexes into the fabric of the child's life. Literally. A prick here for sleepless nights, a seam there for twisted dreams, where the doll's face haunts every corner. Parents might notice their kid waking up screaming, covered in what looks like faint stitch marks on their skin, or toys coming alive in the middle of the night, giggling with malice. It's not about killing, it's about making the betrayer feel the isolation, the worthlessness, the ache of being discarded. In the Hoenn region, where Burnett roams abandoned theatres and dusty attics, trainers whisper about encounters where the Pokémon vanishes after leaving a single, ominous thread on your doorstep. A warning that its grudge knows no bounds. But hold on, because what makes Burnett's tale truly tragic isn't just the revenge, it's the war raging inside its own stuffed chest. You see, beneath that vengeful exterior, there's a flicker of something heartbreaking, a longing for forgiveness that clashes violently with the rage keeping it alive. Imagine it, this puppet of fabric and fury creeping closer to the grown child. Now an adult, perhaps with kids of their own, zipper mouth trembling as if it wants to speak, to say, "Why did you leave me?" Yet the hatred surges, pulling the needles tighter, forcing another curse. Its autonomy at its most cursed. A Pokémon that's finally free to move on its own terms, but trapped in a cycle it can't escape. Pokédex lore hints at this inner turmoil. Burnett's evolutions from Shuppet show a progression from aimless haunting to focused vendetta, but always with that underlying sadness. Shuppet feeds on negative emotions, drawing in the despair of the abandoned, but Burnett channels it into purpose. Yet what purpose is there when revenge only deepens the loneliness? Let me paint a fuller picture for you, because this backstory isn't just a quick entry, it's woven into the fabric of Pokémon encounters across games and anime. Take the episode in the Pokémon anime where Ash and friends stumble into an old mansion haunted by a Burnett. It starts playful, almost, with the doll puppeteering other toys to scare off intruders. But as the story unfolds, you learn it's protecting its territory, a pile of discarded playthings from the same era. The trainer who catches it has to confront not just its power, but its pain. Burnett's attacks aren't wild, they're precise, like it's reenacting the moment of abandonment over and over. In battles, its moves like Shadow Ball or Nightshade feel personal, lobbing orbs of darkness that echo the void left by betrayal. And get this, if you ever manage to befriend a Burnett, it becomes fiercely loyal, stitching up wounds on allies with its needles, turning that vengeful skill into protection. But even then, the trust is fragile. One wrong move, and the rage bubbles up again. It's a reminder that some scars, even on a doll, don't heal clean. Diving deeper, consider the implications in the broader Pokémon world. Burnett represents every forgotten thing, the toys in your childhood attic that gather dust, the promises we make to inanimate objects as kids, and then break without thinking. In regions like Kalos or Galar, where ghost types thrive on human regrets, Burnett sightings spike around old orphanages or thrift stores, places thick with echoes of loss. Trainers who specialise in ghost Pokémon often share stories of their Burnett evolving not through levels, but through moments of emotional release, like helping it confront a lookalike doll or staging a mock reunion with its past. Yet success is rare. Most Burnett remain wanderers, their quest unending, stitching curses not just on the original betrayer, but on anyone who reminds them of that pain. You might laugh at first, thinking it's just a creepy plushie, but then you realise how many of us have discarded something we once loved, only to wonder years later if it comes back in our nightmares? And that twist I mentioned earlier? It hits hardest when you think about Burnett's design. Those crossed eyes aren't vacant, they're pleading, locked in eternal conflict. The rage animates it, gives it purpose, but the longing whispers for peace, for a hand to pick it up again without judgment. In fan theories backed by official art books, some speculate that Mega Burnett, with its enhanced zipper and spectral aura, represents a breakthrough, rage amplified, but with a chance for redemption if the trainer earns its forgiveness. Imagine training one. You'd feel the weight of its history in every command, every Pokeball recall. It's not just a battle partner, it's a living testament to how abandonment echoes through time, turning innocence into something you fear in the dark. But why does this story stick with us so deeply? Because it's universal. We've all been the child discarding the old toy, or the adult looking back with regret. Burnett forces you to confront that, makes you question if the things we love truly stay buried. In Pokémon Mystery Dungeon games, where you play as Pokémon, a Burnett character arc involves breaking free from vengeance to form bonds, showing that even a puppet's autonomy can lead to healing. Yet the tragedy lingers. Most Burnett never find that path. They stitch and haunt, forever chasing closure in a world that moved on without them. As we wrap up this chapter, on Burnett's vengeful awakening, you can see how its tale of betrayal and inner conflict adds such a poignant layer to the Pokédex's darker side. It's a doll's dream turned nightmare, a quest that tears at the seams of what we think Pokémon companionship means. But don't think the shadows end here. Up next, we'll explore the echoes of neglect in abandoned realms, where orphaned Pokémon lurk in forgotten corners, their stories of isolation even more haunting than you could imagine. Stick around, you won't want to miss how these neglected souls pull at your heartstrings. Wait, I could go on forever about the nuances here, because Burnett's lore ties into so many other ghost types. For instance, compare it to Dusclops, another hollow-eyed haunter, but Burnett's fabric body makes its pain feel more intimate, more tactile. You can almost hear the creak of its joints as it moves, driven by stuffing that's more resentment than cotton. In competitive battling, trainers use Burnett for its prankster ability, striking first, with status moves that mimic those nighttime curses, Will-O-Wisp to burn, or Thunder Wave to paralyze, leaving opponents as immobile as a discarded toy. But ethically, catching one raises questions. Are you saving it from its rage, or just redirecting it toward new targets? Pokémon lore experts debate this in forums and books, pointing to entries where Bennett is said to curse those who abandoned it, implying a generational hex that could follow families. Let's expand on that quest for revenge with a hypothetical scenario drawn straight from the essence of its backstory. Suppose a trainer in Rustboro City hears rumours of a child acting strange. Night terrors, unexplained bruises like pinpricks. Investigating, they find a Bennett lurking in the sewers, its zipper mouth muttering garbled words that sound like a child's laughter twisted wrong. Battling it reveals flashbacks in the mind's eye. The doll being thrown out, the child's indifferent shrug. Victory doesn't end it. The Pokémon collapses, threads spilling like tears, begging in silence for understanding. That's the payoff. The quest isn't just external, it's a mirror to the child's own guilt, now grown into something they can't ignore. And the stitching? It's not random. Each curse is a memory sewn in, a needle for every hug withheld, a knot for every playtime skipped. In the anime style, this could play out as a multi-episode arc, with the trainer mediating a forgiveness ritual, but canon keeps it ambiguous, heightening the tragedy. That inner clash it's what elevates Bennett from spooky to sympathetic. Rage keeps it animated, but longing makes it relatable. A puppet's autonomy means it chooses its chains, wandering eternally, because forgiveness would mean letting go of the only life it knows. In manga adaptations like Pokémon Adventures, Bennett appears as a minion to darker forces, but always with that personal vendetta simmering underneath. Trainers who bond with it describe a loyalty that's almost obsessive, guarding campsites by stitching wards against intruders, or using its curse energy to heal faint allies. Yet one betrayal, real or perceived, and it's back to the night, needles flashing. To really drive home the emotional weight, think about real-world parallels. Dolls have been symbols of childhood since forever. Think voodoo dolls, or haunted antiques in folklore. Bennett taps into that primal fear, but flips it. The haunter was once the haunted. In games like Pokémon Sun and Moon, where ghost types guard graves, a Bennett might patrol a junkyard cemetery of toys, its presence a warning to cherish what you have. You, as a listener, might recall your own old stuffed animal, tucked away somewhere. Does it judge you now? That's the genius of this lore. It lingers, stitching doubt into your thoughts long after the video ends. And as we peel back these layers, it's clear Bennett's awakening isn't just tragic. It's a cautionary tale about the cost of carelessness. The betrayal animates it, the revenge propels it, but the unspoken plea for forgiveness is what breaks your heart. In the vast Pokémon universe, few stories capture the fragility of bonds quite like this one. So next time you see a creepy doll in a store window, remember, it might just be waiting for the right spark of emotion to come alive. But for now, let's turn our gaze to those forsaken places where even more sorrow brews. The echoes of neglect in abandoned realms await, promising tales of Pokémon left to fade in the ruins, stories that will make you question every empty building you've passed. You ready for that chill? Echoes of neglect in abandoned realms. Did you know that in the Pokémon world, some of the creepiest spots aren't just haunted by wild encounters, but by the silent echoes of forgotten lives? Places like crumbling towers in Kanto or deserted factories in Kalos, they're not empty. They're filled with orphaned Pokémon, wandering souls like Litwick and Shuppet, drawn to the decay because it mirrors their own abandonment. These ghostly types don't just lurk in the shadows, they thrive there, remnants of trainers who walked away, or disasters that tore everything apart. Let's dive into this unsettling side of the lore. Picture the ruins of an old Pokémon tower in Lavender Town, a place we've all heard about from the early games. It's not just a spooky landmark, It's a graveyard for the neglected. Litwick, those small candle-like Pokémon with their flickering blue flames, often appear here, their lights bobbing like lost lanterns in the fog. But why? According to the Pokédex entries scattered across generations, Litwick aren't born from nothing. They're spirits that feed on the life force of the living. But in these abandoned realms, they're not predators. They're survivors. Trainers once brought their teams to these buildings for battles or storage, but when wars raged or economic crashes hit regions like Sinnoh's industrial zones, people fled, leaving Pokémon behind. Imagine a Litwick, evolved from a simple candle gift to a child, now alone as Lampent or Chandelure, its flame dimmed by years of solitude. You might be thinking, how does a war even factor into Pokémon stories? Well, it's implied in the lore through subtle hints. Take the Distortion World or the aftermath of events in games like Pokémon Legends. Arceus, regions ravaged by mysterious calamities or human conflicts that force migrations. In Unova, for instance, abandoned warehouses from the pre-game era hint at a time when trainers vanished overnight, perhaps during the shadow of Team Plasma's rise or older, unspoken skirmishes. Shuppet floats through these places, its fabric-like body twisting in the wind, drawn to sorrow like a moth to flame. The Pokédex tells us Shuppet feeds on negative emotions, but what if those emotions are its own? Abandoned by a trainer who couldn't afford to keep it, or lost in a disaster like a volcanic eruption in Hoenns. Abandoned labs, Shuppet becomes a harbinger of the Forsaken. These stories aren't isolated. They span regions, creating a web of desolation. In Johto's Bell Tower ruins, similar to Lavender Town, you find echoes of the same tragedy. Pokémon like ghastly lines haunt the rafters, but it's the lesser-known ones, like Duskull, that really pull at your heart. Duskull, with its single glowing eye peering from a skull-like hood, is said to be the spirit of children who died alone. But extend that to orphaned Pokémon, trainers fleeing during implied regional conflicts. Like the ancient wars between clans in Gala's folklore, leave behind young Pokémon that never fully evolve, stuck in their base forms, wailing in the empty halls. It's heartbreaking when you realise these buildings weren't always derelict. They were gyms, daycares, even homes where bonds were forged, only for abandonment to shatter them. Let me tell you about a specific tale from the lore that brings this home. In the games, when you explore the abandoned ship in Hoenn, it's crawling with ghost types, but Litwick isn't native there. It's a later addition in remakes and spin-offs. Yet the implication is clear. These vessels, sunk or left to rot from maritime disasters or trainer negligence, become sanctuaries for the lost. A Shuppet might have been a companion on that ship, promised adventure by its owner, only for a storm, perhaps one stirred by legendary Pokémon unrest, to claim the crew. The trainer perishes or escapes without looking back, and the Shuppet drifts, its body fraying like old sails, seeking any spark of connection. You can almost hear its soft, mournful cries echoing off the rusted bulkheads, a sound that's not just game audio, but a lore-deep lament for what was left behind. And it's not just seas or towers. Urban decay plays a huge role too. In Kalos, with its elegant yet war-torn history, from the Great War implied in Pokémon X and Y, derelict factories in Lumiose City's outskirts, house clusters of these orphans. Litwick lines flicker in the broken windows, their flames casting long shadows that dance like memories of laughter long gone. Trainers abandoned them during evacuations, packing up families and favourites, but leaving the useless ones, the ones too weak for battles or too eerie for homes. Disasters amplify this. Think of the Kalos Wars fallout, where regions were bombed, leaving Pokémon to fend for themselves in the rubble. Shuppet, ever the empath of negativity, gathers in these spots, its evolutions like Bonetti waiting nearby, but before that stage, it's pure vulnerability, a discarded puppet searching for strings that will never return. What makes this even more poignant is how these Pokémon adapt, or try to. In the wild areas of Paldea, open-world explorations reveal more abandoned realms, like forgotten ruins from ancient calamities. Here, Litwick might join a trainer, but the lore suggests many never do. Content to haunt the places that feel like home, trainer abandonment isn't always malicious, sometimes it's survival. A parent trainer, facing poverty after a regional disaster, like the meteor strikes in Sinnoh's lore, releases their team into the wild, hoping they'll fare better. But for ghost types, the wild isn't freedom, it's isolation. Shuppet drifts from building to building, invisible to most, feeding on the ambient sadness until it finds others like itself. Now here's where the story takes a turn that might surprise you. These orphaned Pokémon aren't just solitary wanderers. They form their own ghostly gatherings, turning derelict buildings into surrogate families. It's a revelation hidden in the Pokédex and game mechanics. Litwick leading processions of floating candles through abandoned halls, Shuppet entwining with others in mid-air dances that mimic long-lost play. In regions like Galar's wild area outskirts, with its implied industrial decline, you encounter packs of these spirits, not attacking, but observing, sharing their loneliness like a communal hearth. Wars and disasters strip them of their original bonds, but in the neglect they heal. A Litwick's flame brightens when surrounded by Shuppet's gentle auras, evolving not through stones or levels, but through this shared solace. Think about it. You're exploring a crumbling mansion in Johto, and instead of a hostile encounter, you witness a circle of Duskull and Shuppet, their forms overlapping in a spectral hug. The lore implies this is their way of coping. Trainer abandonment leaves scars, but these gatherings mend them, one ethereal whisper at a time. In Alola's abandoned thrifty megamart, Litwick and Mimikyu cousins huddle, their neglect forging unbreakable ties. Disasters like the Ultra Beast's incursions scattered families, but the ghosts rebuild, turning desolation into a haven. It's not redemption in the traditional sense. No heroic trainer swoops in, but a quiet resilience that makes you root for them. This pattern repeats across the Pokémon world, each region adding layers to the tragedy. In Hun's Skypillar ruins, post-Gruden Kyogre cataclysm, Shuppet haunts the heights, its loneliness echoing the trainers who fled the floods. Litwick below in the caves, their lights guiding lost spirits back to the fold. Implied wars like the ancient conflicts in Ore's desert outskirts from Colosseum games leave even more orphans drifting into these realms. You can't help but feel a pang. These Pokémon, designed for companionship, reduced to haunting echoes, yet finding family in the forgotten. But let's get deeper into specific examples to really drive this home. Take Litwick in the Kalos Pokémon Tower equivalent, the Lumiose Badlands. A trainer, perhaps a young battler, leaves their Litwick behind during the war's chaos, promising to return. Years pass, the building crumbles and the Litwick waits, its wick burning low. Then a Shuppet arrives, abandoned from a travelling circus that disbanded after economic ruin. They don't speak, but their presences mingle, Litwick's warmth chasing Shuppet's chill, forming a bond that evolves them both. The Pokédex hints at this. Lampant ferries souls, but in these gatherings it ferries loneliness away. Or consider Unova's abandoned Castelia city sewers, flooded from urban disasters. Shuppet packs form there, their collective negativity turning into a protective shroud. Trainers who once navigated these for rare finds now avoid them, but the Pokémon thrive, sharing stories of loss through telepathic pulses. One might have been a gift to a child who moved away, another lost in a subway collapse, implied from the region's rapid growth pains. It's these micro-stories that build the bigger picture of neglect. You see, the beauty and the tragedy of Pokémon lore is how it mirrors our world. Wars, whether legendary-induced or human-led, displace everyone, Pokémon included. Disasters like the Red Chain events in Hisui leave trails of orphans, funneling them to derelict spots. And abandonment? It's the quiet killer. Trainers evolving, outgrowing their teams, or facing hardships that force tough choices. Yet, in these abandoned realms, Litwick and Shuppet teach us something profound. Loneliness shared is loneliness halved. Their ghostly gatherings aren't just survival, they're a form of healing, a spectral family born from ashes. As we wrap up these echoes of neglect, you can't shake the feeling that the Pokémon world is richer, sadder for it. These buildings, once symbols of progress, now cradles for the lost, remind us that not every story ends in capture or evolution. Some persist in the shadows, finding light together. But if you thought abandonment was the deepest cut, wait until we uncover the exile of a legendary who was cast out by the creator itself. Up next, Giratina's banishment from divinity, a tale of divine rejection that will leave you questioning the very foundations of the Pokémon universe. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Giratina's banishment from divinity. In the vast mythology of the Pokémon world, few tales carry the weight of eternal isolation like that of Giratina, the renegade Pokémon itself. Born not from egg or evolution, but from the very essence of creation, Giratina emerged as the dark counterpart to Arceus, the original one. You see, when Arceus shaped the universe from chaos, it couldn't do so without balance. Light needs shadow, harmony needs discord. And so, Giratina was forged in that shadowy void, a being of raw power and untamed fury, designed to embody the destructive forces that keep the cosmos in check. But what happens when that shadow grows too wild, too unpredictable for the delicate order its creator envisioned? That's the tragedy at the heart of Giratina's story, a banishment that echoes through the dimensions like a perpetual storm. Let's step back to the dawn of everything. Arceus, in its infinite wisdom, crafted the world as a symphony of peace and prosperity. Lakes shimmered with life, mountains rose in majestic silence, and Pokémon roamed in perfect equilibrium. Dialga commanded time, Palkia shaped space, and together they wove the fabric of reality into something beautiful and stable. But creation isn't just about building, it's about containing the opposites that threaten to unravel it all. Enter Giratina, manifested as Arceus' own darker reflection. This wasn't some accidental byproduct. No, Giratina was intentional, a guardian of antimatter and the unseen undercurrents that could either stabilize or shatter the world. Picture it, a colossal dragon with wings like shattered mirrors. Its body, a swirling mass of ghostly energy and golden accents that hint at its divine origins. In the lore, especially from Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, Giratina represents the rage and violence that Arceus deemed necessary yet dangerous. It was meant to patrol the edges of existence, devouring threats that could corrupt the harmony. But here's the cruel twist. Giratina's very nature made it a mirror too honest, too fierce for the serene paradise Arceus had built. You might wonder, how could something so integral to creation become its outcast? The answer lies in Giratina's temperament. While the other legendary Pokémon embodied control, Time flowing steadily, space expanding evenly. Giratina was chaos incarnate. Its power wasn't measured in gentle evolutions or strategic battles. It was a force of upheaval, capable of warping reality itself. In the ancient texts of Sinnoh mythology, whispered through the games and expanded in the anime, Giratina's aggression clashed with the world's budding peace. It didn't just fight threats, it consumed them with a voracious hunger, leaving voids where balance once stood. Arceus, seeing this volatility as a risk to the harmonious realm it had laboured to create, made a fateful decision. Giratina's violence, though born from necessity, threatened to tip the scales toward destruction. It was too primal, too untamed for a world where Pokémon and trainers could thrive in unity. And so, in an act that feels less like justice and more like parental rejection, Arceus banished its own shadow. Not to oblivion, but to a realm where its fury could rage without endangering the creation it helped birth. That banishment wasn't a simple exile to some distant cave or forgotten island. No, Arceus tore open the veil of reality and hurled Giratina into the distortion world, a fractured dimension that's as much a prison as it is a sanctuary. Imagine a place where gravity pulls in every direction at once, where up is down and left twists into right. The distortion world isn't a world in the traditional sense, it's an inverted mirror of our own, a labyrinth of floating platforms, reversed colours, and endless voids that defy logic. In Platinum, when you first enter this realm through the turnback cave, the screen warps, the music distorts into eerie echoes, and every step feels like walking on the underside of existence. It's a place of solitude so profound that time loses meaning, where the laws of physics bend to Giratina's will, but trap it in eternal isolation. This isn't just punishment, it's a clever containment. Arceus ensured that Giratina's destructive tendencies could play out here, far from the Pokémon world, without spilling over. But think about the loneliness of it all. Giratina, once part of the divine trio shaping reality, now rules over nothingness, its roars echoing unanswered in the fractured silence. As you delve deeper into Giratina's lore, the emotional layers start to peel back, revealing a being not just powerful, but profoundly alone. In the distortion world, there's no sun to warm its scales, no winds to carry its flight, no companions to share the weight of eternity. The environment itself mirrors its inner turmoil, platforms that crumble and reform, rivers that flow upward, skies that stare back like accusing eyes. Legends say Giratina paces these inverted halls, its 3 golden half rings glowing faintly as reminders of the divinity it lost. And yet, for all its rage, there's a quiet observance to Giratina's existence. From the cracks between worlds, it watches. It gazes upon the Pokémon world it co-created, the lands teeming with life that it can never touch. You can almost hear the longing in the way the lore describes it, a sentinel forever on the outside, yearning for the harmony it was deemed too violent to join. In moments like the distortion world encounter in the games, when Giratina emerges not in blind fury, but with a calculated strike, you sense that undercurrent of resentment mixed with nostalgia. This watchful exile adds such a poignant depth to Giratina's tragedy. Consider the implications for the entire Pokémon universe. Without Giratina, the balance is incomplete, yet its presence is a constant threat if it ever breaks free. In the anime's movie Giratina and the Sky Warrior, this dynamic play out vividly. Giratina isn't portrayed as a mindless villain. It's a protector gone rogue, lashing out at intruders who disturb its domain, all while the world above flourishes without it. The film shows Giratina allying uneasily with humans and other Pokémon, hinting at a buried desire for connection. But every time it's pulled back to its prison, the portal sealing shut like a final rejection. You have to ask yourself, what does that do to a being of such godlike stature? Does the violence Arceus feared stem from its nature, or from the isolation that festers like an open wound? In the games, catching Giratina requires navigating the turn-back cave's puzzles, a metaphor for the labyrinthine pain of its banishment. Each wrong turn leads you deeper into confusion, much like Giratina's own disorientation in exile. Expanding on this, Giratina's story resonates because it challenges our view of the legendaries as infallible icons. Arceus, often hailed as the Alpha and Omega, shows a flawed side here, creating something powerful and then discarding it when it doesn't fit the mold. It's a narrative of divine hubris, where the creator's pursuit of perfection leaves casualties in its wake. For trainers who encounter Giratina in battles, it's not just a tough opponent with moves like Shadow Force or Dragon Breath. It's a symbol of what happens when power is unchecked and then restrained. In competitive play, Giratina's ghost dragon typing makes it a tanky force, able to phase through attacks and strike from the shadows, echoing its banished state. But beyond the stats, there's this undercurrent of sorrow. Imagine training it, bringing it into your team, only to realize you're giving it a taste of the world it was denied. Does it appreciate the battles, the camaraderie, or does it remind it of what's lost? Diving even further, the Distortion World's design in the lore serves as a psychological prison tailored to Giratina's essence. Inverted reality isn't just visual chaos, it's a constant assault on the senses, forcing Giratina to confront its own distortions. No straight paths, no predictable horizons, everything is askew, amplifying the sense of alienation. Solitude here isn't peaceful, it's oppressive, with the fractured echoes of the Pokémon world filtering through like taunts. Giratina helped forge that world, contributed its shadow to make the light shine brighter, yet it's barred from ever setting foot there. This yearning gaze from afar is perhaps the most heartbreaking beat. In quiet moments of the lore, it's depicted as peering through dimensional rifts, observing evolutions, migrations, even trainer journeys with a mix of pride and pain. What if it could join? Would its violence corrupt the harmony, or could it find a place in the balance? To truly grasp the tragedy, consider parallels within the Pokémon world itself. Other legendaries like Mewtwo grapple with creation's burdens, but Giratina's is unique, eternal separation from its origins. In the Sinnoh region's myths, elders speak of Giratina as the Renegade, a title that stings with betrayal. It didn't choose rebellion, it was labelled as such for existing. And in the game's post-game content, summoning Giratina via the Azure Flute or exploring its domain feels like intruding on private grief. You emerge changed, pondering the cost of creation's perfection. For fans, this backstory elevates Giratina from a boss fight to a character worthy of empathy. Merchandise, fan art, even theories about its potential return in future games all stem from this core sadness. But let's not gloss over the power it wields even in exile. Giratina's abilities like Aura Sphere and Earth Power showcase its divine heritage, twisted through the lens of distortion. In my battles against it, the screen shakes, reality glitches, pulling you into its world briefly. It's a reminder that banishment hasn't dulled its edge. If anything, solitude has honed it into something sharper, more vengeful. Yet that observance persists. From the Distortion world, it monitors threats like Team Galactic's meddling with time and space, intervening when the balance it once guarded teeters. In Platinum's storyline, Giratina's emergence isn't random aggression. It's a desperate act to preserve the world from further chaos, even as it suffers alone. You can't help but feel a pang. Here's a being that could have been a hero, reduced to a shadow lurking on the fringes. As we wrap up this chapter on Giratina's banishment from divinity, it's clear that its story is one of profound loss, a shadow cast out for being too true to its purpose. The harmonious world thrives, but at what price? The distortion. World solitude ensures safety, yet it breeds an unending ache for the creation it helped shape, and that observant gaze, forever watching from afar, tugs at the heartstrings, making you wonder about redemption in a universe of second chances. But hold on, because the tragedies don't end here. Up next in Chapter 13, Mimikyu's disguised desperation for connection, we'll uncover a tale of hidden longing that might just break your heart even more. How far would you go to belong if showing your true self meant pushing everyone away? Mimikyu's disguised desperation for connection. What if the most beloved mascot in the Pokémon world was secretly the key to a creature's deepest heartbreak? Mimikyu, that quirky little ghost hiding under a tattered Pikachu costume, isn't just another cute addition to your team. No, its story cuts right to the core of loneliness in the Pokémon universe, a desperate bid for connection that's as poignant as it is perilous. You see, Mimikyu doesn't choose its disguise for fun or flair. It's a survival tactic, born from an existence so isolated that even the act of being seen could end in tragedy. Let's dive into what makes Mimikyu tick. Introduced in the sunny islands of Alola during Pokémon Sun and Moon, this Pokémon immediately stands out with its makeshift Pikachu outfit. Pieced together from an old rag and some scribbled-on features, that yellow hood with the lopsided ears. It's not a playful cosplay, it's a shield. Beneath that cloth lies a form so horrifying, so alien, that glimpsing it unleashes a curse capable of sapping the life from anyone unfortunate enough to peek. Pokédex entries don't hold back on this. They describe how removing the disguise triggers an instant, deadly affliction, like a ghost's vengeful glare that drains vitality on the spot. Imagine training a Pokémon that could accidentally kill you just by accidentally bumping into your gaze. It's not hyperbole. In the lore, it's treated as fact, a biological hazard wrapped in innocence. But why Pikachu, of all choices? Here's where the desperation really hits home. Pikachu is the face of Pokémon, the electric icon that starred in movies, anime episodes, and countless kids' dreams. Mimikyu idolizes that popularity, craving the effortless friendships Pikachu seems to attract. In its mind, slipping into that disguise means instant acceptance. You'll see it shuffling around in tall grass or peeking from shadows in games like Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, mimicking Pikachu's moves with eerie accuracy. Thunderbolt zaps that fizzle out awkwardly, or a tail whip that just flaps its rag. It's trying so hard to fit in, to be one of the crowd. Trainers who catch Mimikyu often describe it as clingy, almost needy, following them with wide, hopeful eyes under that hood. Yet that neediness stems from a profound fear. What if the cloth tears? What if a battle rips it away? The rejection wouldn't just sting, it could literally be fatal for everyone involved. Think about the isolation this enforces. Mimikyu can't drop its guard, not even for a second. In the wild, it haunts abandoned houses or lurks in foggy routes, forever on the periphery of Pokémon society. Other creatures give it a wide berth, sensing something off about that shambling figure. It's like a kid at school wearing a costume every day, terrified that without it, no one will play. And the attempts at friendship? They're heartbreakingly doomed from the start. Mimikyu reaches out, offers itself as a partner, but the barrier of its secret keeps true bonds at arm's length. In the anime, there's an episode where a Mimikyu joins Ash's group. desperately trying to bond with Pikachu himself. It copies his every move, even getting jealous when Pikachu gets attention. But when the disguise slips just a little, chaos ensues, fear ripples through the team, and Mimikyu retreats, more alone than before. That fear of rejection isn't abstract, it's wired into its very being. Harm could come to those it loves most, turning affection into accidental danger. You have to wonder, does Mimikyu even know how lethal it is? The lore suggests a tragic self-awareness. It sews and patches its costume obsessively, using moves like Shadow Sneak to dart away and fix any damage. In battles, it fights with a ferocity that's equal parts defensive and yearning. Play rough to hug its foes a bit too tightly, or astonished to startle but secretly hoping for a laugh. Yet every interaction is shadowed by that hidden truth. Trainers who befriend Mimikyu learn to respect the boundaries, never questioning the hood, never pushing too close. It's a partnership built on unspoken rules, where love is expressed through battles won together rather than quiet moments of vulnerability. But for Mimikyu, that's not enough. Deep down, it yearns for the kind of connection where it can be fully seen and still cherished. Instead, it's trapped in this cycle of disguise and distance, driven by the terror that authenticity equals annihilation. Now let's unpack the irony that twists the knife even deeper. By dressing as Pikachu, Mimikyu is chasing love in a world that already fears its concealed agony. Pikachu represents joy, adventure, the unbreakable trainer bond. But Mimikyu's version is a funhouse mirror, adorable on the surface, but reflecting back the pain of exclusion. It's like idolizing a celebrity from afar, copying their style in hopes of borrowing their spotlight, only to realize the costume hides scars no one else has. In fan theories and even official art, you see Mimikyu surrounded by other Pikachu lookalikes, but it's always the outsider, the one with stitches showing, or eyes that don't quite match. The Alolan lore ties this to broader themes of otherness. Mimikyu embodies the immigrant spirit, the newcomer desperate to assimilate but haunted by cultural divides. Except here, the divide is literal. Peel back the layers, and what's underneath isn't just different, it's deadly. Consider how this plays out in the games. When you encounter Mimikyu in a max raid battle, or as a totem in trials, it's not aggressive for aggression's sake. It's protecting its fragile world. Defeating it feels less like victory and more like exposing a vulnerability. And post-battle, if you catch it, that Pokeball becomes its new sanctuary, a place where the disguise can hold without judgment. But even in your party, Mimikyu's moveset screams isolation. Drain Punch to steal life force, a metaphor for taking what it can't give freely, or Swords Dance to sharpen its edges against the world. It's a Pokémon that evolves no further, stuck in its base form, much like its emotional state. No mega evolution, no grand transformation, just perpetual hiding. This desperation extends to its interactions with humans too. Stories from the Pokémon Center nurses hint at Mimikyu's quiet pleas for repair, dragging its frayed cloth to the counter without a word. They patch it up gently, knowing the stakes, but never see the face beneath. It's a bond of trust yet incomplete. You, as a trainer, become its lifeline, but also its cage. Do you ever feel that weight? The responsibility of guarding a secret that could destroy everything? Mimikyu's tale forces us to confront that. In a franchise full of happy endings, this one's laced with perpetual what-ifs. What if someone saw the real you and didn't run? What if connection didn't demand concealment? Delving deeper into the Pokédex lore, entries from different regions paint a consistent picture of sorrow. In Sun, it's called the Disguise Pokémon, noted for its love of Pikachu, leading to dangerous mimicry. Moon adds the cursed detail, warning that viewing its true form brings paranoia and death. Let's Go versions echo this, emphasizing the loneliness. But it's Ultra Sun that hits hardest. It can fool any Pokémon and make them think it's a Pikachu. Once it's fooled a target, it will shadow sneak up and slash with its sharp claws. See the pattern? Deception isn't malice. It's the only path to proximity. And when those friendships inevitably falter, because how long can a lie sustain real emotion, Mimikyu slinks back into shadows, patches its heart as much as its cloth, and tries again. Real-world inspirations add layers to this tragedy. Mimikyu draws from folklore like the Yuki-onna, snow spirits whose beauty hides a deadly chill, or even modern tales of social anxiety where people wear masks to navigate crowds. In Pokémon's case, it's amplified by the Pikachu choice, a nod to the franchise's own iconography. Game Freak knew what they were doing, making us love something that's programmed for solitude. Fan art explodes with depictions of Mimikyu's true form, shadowy tendrils and hollow eyes that evoke pity more than fear. Communities on Reddit and Twitter share headcanons of Mimikyu finding solace in dark-type teams, where hiding is the norm, or rare moments of acceptance in haunted mansions with other ghosts. But let's not gloss over the harm it inflicts, even unintentionally. There are in-game hints of past victims, trainers who got too curious, Pokémon who peeled back the rag in play. It's not evil, it's self-preservation gone awry. Driven by that primal fear of rejection, Mimikyu lashes out to protect itself, dooming any chance at breaking the cycle. Imagine the internal torment. Wanting touch but knowing touch could kill. Attempts at friendship become high-stakes gambles, where a single tear in the fabric unravels everything. In manga adaptations like Pokémon Adventures, Mimikyu's arcs explore this further, showing it allying with villains not out of loyalty, but shared outcast status, only to betray when exposed. This irony peaks in how the world responds. Fans adore Mimikyu for its cuteness, buying plushies and costumes, oblivious to the law's undercurrent of pain. It's seeking love in a fan base that celebrates the disguise, fearing the hidden pain that makes it real. You might dress as Mimikyu for Halloween, laughing at the gag, but the Pokémon itself would shudder. Another layer of cloth over its truth. In battles, we command it to fight, cheering its Z-move, "Let's snuggle forever," which sounds wholesome until you realise it's a desperate embrace from afar. As we wrap up Mimikyu's story, it's clear this isn't just a quirky ghost. It's a mirror to our own fears of being truly known. The cloth disguised as Pikachu hides a form lethal to those who see it truly, and those doomed attempts at friendship, fueled by isolation and dread of rejection or harm, leave it forever on the edge. Yet in that twist of fate, choosing Pikachu's image to chase connection only underscores the world's fear of its concealed agony, a poignant reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters are the loneliest ones. And if Mimikyu's veiled yearning tugs at your heartstrings, wait until you hear about Wally's frail fight against fate in the next chapter. How does a sickly kid, with barely a breath in his lungs, forge a bond that defies his own destiny? You won't want to miss the raw perseverance that turns weakness into legend. Wally's frail fight against fate. In the vast world of Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, where every young trainer dreams of conquering gyms and claiming the championship, there's one story that hits differently, one that reminds us not all journeys start with boundless energy and unbreakable confidence. Meet Wally, a boy whose battle isn't just against wild Pokémon or rival trainers, but against his own fragile body, a chronic illness that turns even the simplest throw of a Pokéball into an exhausting ordeal. You know how it feels when you're playing through Hoenn for the first time, rushing from Petalburg City toward the first gym in Rustboro, your team growing stronger with every encounter. Well, Wally's introduction interrupts that momentum in a way that's quietly profound. He's not some cocky rival like May or Brendan. He's the pale, slender kid your father points you toward, asking you to help him catch his very first Pokémon. But why him? Why does this frail figure stand out in a region full of vibrant adventures? It's because Wally embodies the raw vulnerability that Pokémon games rarely spotlight. A reminder that not every hero is built for the spotlight from the start. Moment if you've played the originals or the remakes in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. You're in Route 102, the grass rustling underfoot, and there he is, Wally, accompanied by his overprotective uncle. He looks up at you with these wide, determined eyes, but his voice is soft, almost hesitant. He's been sick for as long as he can remember, his body betraying him with every step, every breath. Doctors in the Pokémon world don't specify the exact nature of his condition, but it's clear. Chronic fatigue, shortness of breath, a weakness that makes physical exertion feel like climbing a mountain. In the games, it's subtle, but it paints a picture of a boy who spent more time in bed than on the road, watching other kids his age chase their dreams while he's stuck dreaming from afar. And then comes that pivotal scene, the one that cements Wally's tragedy and triumph in our hearts. He wants a Pokémon, not just any Pokémon, but one to call his own, to prove to himself and his family that he can be a trainer too. You hand him a Pokéball, guide him toward a nearby patch of grass where a wild Ralts is hiding. Ralts, that psychic fairy type with its empathetic nature, the Pokémon that senses emotions like a sixth sense. But for Wally, throwing that ball isn't a casual flick of the wrist, it's a struggle. His arms tremble, his chest heaves as he fights for air, each gasp a reminder of his limitations. In the dialogue, it's understated, but you can hear the weight in his words when he thanks you afterward. His voice laced with relief and a spark of pride. He caught it. Despite everything, he caught Ralts. What makes this moment so heartbreaking is how it mirrors real-life battles many face, those invisible fights against illness that don't come with fanfare or badges. Wally's not superhuman. He's just a kid pushing through, and in that push, he finds his first taste of strength. Ralts doesn't just become his partner, it becomes his anchor. You see, Ralts has this ability to feel the emotions around it, to heal and support in ways that go beyond stats and movesets. For Wally, amid those breathing crises that leave him doubled over, Ralts is there, a quiet presence offering solace. It's like the Pokémon world is whispering that even in frailty, connection can spark resilience. As you progress through the game, Wally doesn't fade into the background like some NPCs. He evolves, literally and figuratively, but his story arc is a slow burn of perseverance, laced with self-doubt. Remember when he challenges you on the way to Mobile City? He's got his Kirlia by then, evolved from Ralts, and though he loses, there's no bitterness, just this earnest admission that he's still learning, still fighting not just opponents, but his own insecurities. I want to get stronger, he says, and you feel it, the doubt that creeps in during sleepless nights, the fear that his body will always hold him back. But he doesn't quit. He trains, he travels, even when every route feels like a marathon. Think about the remakes in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. They flesh this out even more. Wally's not just a one-off encounter, he becomes a recurring rival, popping up in Verdanturf Town, where the clean air is supposed to help his condition, and later in the Windstrait family's home, where he practices relentlessly. Each meeting shows growth, but it's always tempered by that underlying fragility. During the bike shop scene, he's so excited about getting a bike, but you know deep down, it's a double-edged sword. Mobility means pushing his limits further. And when he battles you on Victory Road near the endgame, he's come so far, his team a testament to his grit. yet he still carries that humility, that awareness of his starting point. This evolution from weakness to resilient trainer isn't some overnight transformation. It's gritty, it's real. Wally doubts himself constantly. In the game's lore, implied through his dialogues, he's probably heard the whispers from others, pitying glances from family, concerns from friends, about whether he should even be out there. You're too weak for this, they might say, or worse, nothing at all, leaving him to battle those thoughts alone. But with Ralts, now Gardevoir in his final battle, he finds a bond that silences the noise. Gardevoir, the embraced Pokémon, protects its trainer with fierce loyalty, teleporting them out of danger, healing wounds both physical and emotional. For Wally, it's symbolic. His illness is the danger, the doubt the wound, and through perseverance, he teleports himself toward a stronger self. You have to wonder, what does this mean for us as players? When we control our avatars, battling alongside Wally, we're not just helping a side character, we're witnessing a narrative of quiet heroism. In a franchise often criticised for its light-hearted escapism, Wally's story injects a dose of reality. Chronic illness doesn't discriminate, and neither does self-doubt. Maybe you felt it yourself. Those days when getting out of bed feels impossible, when pursuing a passion seems out of reach. Wally shows that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting up, one shaky breath at a time. Delve deeper into the Hoenn region's context, and Wally's tale ties into the broader themes of Ruby and Sapphire. The story revolves around balance, land versus sea, growth versus destruction. But Wally represents personal balance, harmonizing his frail body with his unyielding spirit. His uncle's protectiveness, always hovering in those early scenes, underscores the external pressures. Family means well, but their worry can amplify his insecurities. Yet Wally chooses the path of a trainer, defying the safer route of staying home. It's a fight against fate, as if the stars aligned to keep him sidelined, but he rewrites the script. Consider the emotional layers in his Pokémon choices. Starting with Ralts makes perfect sense. It's not a powerhouse like a starter, but a gentle soul that grows with empathy. As he captures more, like a Makuhita for physical bulk, or a Roselia for subtle healing, he builds a team that compensates for his weaknesses, much like he compensates in life. Each evolution mirrors his own. Ralts to Kirlia to Gardevoir, a progression from innocence to guardianship, from vulnerability to veiled power. And let's not forget the post-game glimpses. In the battle frontier or rematch scenarios, Wally's there, still pushing, still breathing through the strain. It's a subtle nod to ongoing struggle, no fairy tale cure-all. Pokémon doesn't shy away from that. It leaves room for interpretation, for us to fill in the blanks with hope. Does he become a champion? The games don't say, but his perseverance suggests he could, in his own way, on his own terms. This frail fight against fate resonates because it's understated tragedy wrapped in inspiration. Wally isn't defined by his illness. He's defined by what he does despite it. He struggles to throw that Pokeball, yes, but in doing so, he catches more than a Pokémon. He catches a glimpse of his potential. Amid breathing crises, bonding with Ralts teaches him that strength comes from within, shared with those who understand your pain without words. As we wrap up Wally's poignant journey, it's clear his story is a beacon for anyone facing their own battles, big or small. But hold on, because the tragedies in Pokémon don't stop with one boy's resilience. Up next in Chapter 15, Threads of Tragedy. Across the Pokémon world, we'll unravel how these heartbreaking tales connect in ways you never imagined, weaving a tapestry of loss and longing that spans generations and regions. What hidden links tie Cubone's tears to Mimikyu's disguise? Stick around. You won't want to miss how it all comes together. Threads of tragedy across the Pokémon world. Did you know that in the Pokémon universe, every major tragedy isn't just a standalone tearjerker, but part of a vast web of sorrow that spans regions, generations, and even the gods themselves? We're talking about threads of tragedy that weave through the lore, binding stories of profound loss, cruel abandonment, and the faint glimmers of redemption that make the whole franchise hit you right in the feels. As we dive into this chapter, let's pull those threads together and see how they form a tapestry that's as haunting as it is beautiful. Take Cubone, for instance, that lonely little orphan wandering the world with its mother's skull as a helmet. The loss here is raw and immediate, a child Pokémon left motherless, crying into the night because the pain never fully fades. But connect that to N from Unova, raised in a gilded cage by his adoptive father Getsis, abandoned emotionally long before he even understood the world. N's isolation wasn't just neglect, it was a deliberate abandonment designed to twist his heart, making him believe humans were the monsters abusing Pokémon. Both stories scream of that initial wound, the severing of bonds that should never break. And yet, there's this undercurrent of seeking something more, a redemption arc waiting in the wings, where understanding might heal what was torn apart. Now, zoom out to AZ in Carlos, the ancient king whose grief over his lost Floette birthed the ultimate weapon. His loss was cataclysmic, fueling a war that scorched the earth and left countless orphans in its wake. For 3,000 years, he wandered in exile, abandoned by time itself, his one shot at redemption rejected when Floette turned away in horror at what he'd become. It's like these tales are echoing each other, aren't they? The abandoned doll that becomes Banette, discarded by the very child who once loved it, channeling that betrayal into a vengeful spirit. Hatred animates it, but deep down, you sense the longing for reconciliation, for the owner to see the pain they caused and make it right. These motifs don't stop at personal heartbreaks. They ripple into the very fabric of the world. Think about Yamask, those spectral Pokémon who were once humans, carrying the masks of their former faces like eternal reminders of lives cut short. Every time one weeps while gazing at that mask, it's a fresh stab of loss, an abandonment from the humanity they can never reclaim. And redemption, it's elusive, but it's there in the quiet moments when a trainer bonds with them, offering a new purpose amid the tears. Or consider Phantump, born from the spirits of children who perished lost in the woods, their innocent forms now rooted in tree stumps, forever tied to the place of their demise. These aren't just ghost stories, they're echoes of real abandonment, where the forest swallows the vulnerable whole. What strikes me is how these threads connect across the regions, creating a shared language of suffering. In the abandoned buildings of places like Lotto regions, think the haunted towers or derelict mansions, you find orphaned Pokémon like Litwick or Shuppet flickering in the shadows of neglect. They're the survivors of human folly, left behind when trainers move on or disasters strike. Their loneliness, a direct parallel to Giratina's exile. Banished by Arceus for its violent nature, Giratina slumbers in the distortion world, peering through cracks at the vibrant life it can never touch. That's abandonment on a cosmic scale, a god cast out like yesterday's trash, yearning for a redemption that might come if the balance is restored. And then there's Mimikyu, that heartbreaking mimic hiding under a ragged Pikachu costume, desperate for friendship, but cursed with a form that brings death to those who see it truly. Its abandonment is self-imposed out of fear, but rooted in the rejection it anticipates. You can't help but feel for it, wondering if redemption lies in finding someone who looks past the disguise, Even Wally from Hoenn fits this pattern, the frail boy battling illness. His first Pokémon catch a Ralts born of sheer willpower amid gasping breaths. His story is one of personal loss to his health, abandonment by his own body, but threaded with the redemptive power of perseverance and the bonds he forges. These connections aren't accidental. They're deliberate design choices by the creators, drawing from the darkest corners of human storytelling to make Pokémon more than just a game. Let's talk about those real-world inspirations from folklore, because they add layers that amplify the emotional punch. Cubone's tale mirrors ancient myths of orphaned spirits, like the Japanese yurei, restless ghosts tied to unresolved grief, much like Marowak's vengeful haunt in the Pokémon Tower, slain by Team Rocket, but unable to find peace. That skull-wearing orphan? It evokes the Celtic tales of the Dullahan, a headless rider whose appearance foretells death, but twisted here into a symbol of maternal protection turned eternal mourning. N's manipulation draws straight from fairy tale villains. Think the cruel stepmothers in Grimm stories, or the isolating enchantments in Andersen's works, where children are pawned for power. Getsy's as the puppeteer. It's like the folklore of changelings, where innocence is stolen and warped by otherworldly forces. AZ's epic, pure Arthurian legend vibes, the quest for the Holy Grail gone wrong, where a king's noble intent unleashes apocalypse, echoing the fall of Camelot through hubris and loss. His 3 millennia vigil? That's the wandering Jew motif from medieval lore, cursed to roam eternally for a desperate act, seeking forgiveness that slips away. Yamask pulls from Mexican Day of the Dead traditions, where the living honour the dead with masks and offerings. But here, it's internalized torment, the soul weeping for its lost self. Phantom and its evolutions, straight out of Slavic forest spirits like the Leshy, guardians born from tragedy, luring the lost but rooted in the sorrow of untimely deaths. Burnet's revenge, doll folklore everywhere, from the Japanese kokeshi dolls that come alive with resentment to European tales of haunted toys, like the animated puppets in Hoffman's Nutcracker that blur love and abandonment. The orphaned Pokémon in ruined places, that's urban legend territory, ghost stories of forgotten children in asylums or factories, amplified by Victorian ghost hunts where spirits of the neglected cry out. Giratina's banishment resonates with fallen angel myths, from Lucifer's exile in Christian lore to the Norse Jörmungandr, the world serpent cast into isolation, forever circling the edges of creation. Mimikyu? It's the yokai of disguise, like the Japanese kitsune or the Irish puka, shapeshifters hiding monstrous truths to seek connection, but doomed by revelation. Even Wally's struggle echoes real folk tales of the sickly hero, like the consumptive youths in romantic literature, who find strength in unlikely companions, redeeming their frailty through quiet triumphs. These folklore roots don't just add flavour, they crank up the emotional resonance, making the Pokémon world feel ancient and lived in, like these tragedies have been whispered around campfires for centuries. When you hear Cubone's cries at midnight, it's not just sad, it's primal, tapping into that universal fear of losing family. The same chill you get from a ghost story told in the dark. N's betrayal hits harder because it mirrors the cautionary tales we tell kids about trusting strangers, but inverted to question our own treatment of the world. AZ's weapon? It warns of technology's double edge, much like Icarus flying too close to the sun, but with the added weight of eternal solitude that makes you ponder your own regrets. Imagine piecing this together as a trainer in the game, stumbling upon a Yamask in a cave, seeing it clutch that human mask, and suddenly your Pokémon journey feels heavier, more empathetic. These threads force you to confront the cost of adventure, Not every battle won leaves everyone whole. The abandonment motif, in particular, resonates because we've all felt discarded at some point. A friend moving away, a dream shelved, and seeing it in these creatures makes their redemption arcs all the sweeter. When Floette finally returns to AZ after millennia, or when N breaks free from Ghetsis' lies, it's not cheap closure, it's earned folklore-style catharsis that leaves you hopeful yet haunted. But here's where it gets personal for you, the viewer. How do these stories deepen the franchise's themes of empathy? Pokémon isn't just about collecting and conquering, it's a mirror for our own vulnerabilities. That Cubone mask, it's a reminder to protect the grieving. N's arc, it challenges you to question power structures and speak up for the voiceless. AZ teaches the dangers of unchecked sorrow, urging balance over revenge. Yamask and Phantump invite compassion for the transformed, the ones society overlooks. Burnett warns against thoughtless discard, pushing you toward mindful relationships. The orphaned ghosts in the ruins, they highlight the scars of progress, making you value the bonds you build. Giratina's exile fosters understanding of the outcast, showing even deities need belonging. Mimikyu begs us to look beyond appearances, embracing the hidden pains in others. And Wally? His perseverance amid illness underscores that empathy isn't pity, it's partnership in the fight. Together, these motifs transform Pokémon from a light-hearted escape into a profound exploration of what it means to lose, to be left behind, and to rise again. They make you empathize not just with the characters, but with every Pokémon you catch, every rival you face, turning gameplay into a subtle lesson in humanity. As we unravel more of these layers, you start to see the Pokémon world not as a playground, but as a cautionary epic, rich with the folklore that grounds our own myths. The emotional resonance builds because these aren't sanitized tales. They're laced with the grit of real loss, making every victory feel fragile, every friendship precious. You might replay a game differently now, pausing to wonder about the backstories lurking off screen, the abandoned spirits watching from the shadows. And that brings us to the heart of it all. These threads don't just connect the tragedies, they redeem the franchise itself, elevating it beyond battles to something soul-stirring. So next time you're out there in the tall grass, listen closer. The cries you hear might be more than random encounters. They could be the world's way of teaching empathy, one heartbreaking lore at a time. But wait, there's more to this sorrowful weave. We've touched on the losses and abandonments, but what about the hopes flickering in the dark? That's where our next chapter comes in. Legacy of sorrow and hope. How do these tales turn pain into possibility? And what redemptive arcs await that could change how you see the entire series? Stick around. You won't want to miss the revelations that bridge the grief to something truly uplifting. Legacy of sorrow and hope. Did you know that the Pokémon franchise, which started as a simple game about collecting creatures, has quietly woven in themes of loss and redemption so profound that they've influenced everything from anime episodes to fan art communities worldwide? These top 10 tragic stories we've explored aren't just side notes. They're the backbone of how Pokémon evolved from a kid's adventure into a universe grappling with real human emotions, like grief, isolation, and the faint spark of hope amid despair. Let's take a step back and see how these tales have reshaped the narrative landscape. Remember Cubone and Marowak? That orphan Pokémon wearing its mother's skull, forever marked by Team Rocket's cruelty in the original games. It wasn't just a creepy design choice, it introduced mortality into a world where Pokémon were supposed to be eternal companions. Before Pokémon, monster collecting games treated creatures as tools or prizes, but Cubone forced players to confront death head-on. You catch it, sure, but you're also reminded that every bond comes with the risk of shattering. This set the tone early, pushing Game Freak to layer emotional depth into later generations. Turning battles into something more than stats, they became stories of survival and remembrance. Then there's N from Black and White, the manipulated prince raised in a cage of lies by Getsis. His arc didn't just humanize the villainy of Team Plasma, it evolved the entire trainer dynamic. In earlier games, antagonists were cartoonish, like Giovanni with his mafia vibes. But N's tragedy made us question the ethics of training Pokémon. Are we liberators or captors? Fans started debating this in forums, and it influenced spin-offs like Pokémon Legends, Arceus, where cultural clashes between humans and Pokémon echo N's isolation. You can feel it in the way the games now emphasize consent in catches, a direct ripple from that sorrowful backstory. AZ's eternal wanderings in X and Y take this evolution even further. A king who built a doomsday weapon for one floette, only to lose it to 3,000 years of regret. This wasn't isolated, it tied into Kalus's war-torn history, making the region's beauty a facade over buried pain. Pokémon's narrative shifted here from episodic adventures to interconnected lore, where ancient sins affect the present. Think about how Mega Evolutions, born from AZ's desperation, now symbolize not just power, but the cost of clinging to the past. You've probably bonded with a Mega Pokémon in battles, but did you ever pause to consider the grief fueling that transformation? It's moments like these that turned Pokémon into a series willing to explore immortality's curse, paving the way for time travel mechanics in later titles. Yamask's weeping masks pull us into the supernatural side of tragedy, transforming human souls into Pokémon haunted by their former lives. This concept elevated ghost types from spooky fillers to vessels of unresolved sorrow. In the Unova region, where Yamask debuted, the game started incorporating folklore-inspired backstories, blending Japanese yokai traditions with Western ghost stories. It impacted the anime too. Episodes featuring Yamask often delve into themes of identity loss, making viewers empathize with these monsters as echoes of people. You might recall catching one and seeing it cry. That simple animation mechanic evolved the narrative by making every encounter a potential therapy session for the soul. Phantump and its evolution, Trevenant, bring the forest's whispers of lost children into the mix. These spirits born from tragic accidents in the woods added a layer of environmental storytelling to Kalos and beyond. Pokémon's world building grew richer, with areas like haunted groves now feeling alive with implied histories. It influenced how regions are designed. Galar's wild areas, for instance, hint at similar orphan spirits wandering misty paths. This evolution in lore encourages players to explore not just for badges, but for the stories hidden in the underbrush, turning the overworld into a tapestry of quiet memorials. Burnett's vengeful doll origin flips abandonment into a tale of twisted loyalty. Discarded and reanimated by rage, it seeks out its former owner, but deep down, it's a cry for reconnection. This backstory boosted the popularity of marionette-like Pokémon in fan creations and even inspired merchandise lines that lean into the eerie cuteness. Narratively, it pushed the series toward exploring consumerism's dark side. How kids outgrow toys, leaving them to die alone. You've likely seen Burnett in competitive play, but its tragedy reminds us that power comes from pain, evolving Pokémon's themes from friendship to the complexities of fleeting bonds. The orphaned Pokémon in ruined buildings, like Litwick luring the lost or Shuppet feeding on envy, paint a broader picture of societal neglect. Across games from Hone to Paldea, these encounters in abandoned towers or slums highlight a world where not every Pokémon gets a heroic arc. This scattered lore evolved the narrative by decentralizing the spotlight. Trainers aren't always saviors, sometimes they're just passers-by in a cycle of loneliness. It deepened the immersion, making you question the prosperity of cities like Lumiosi, while shadows of the forgotten lurk nearby. Giratina's banishment to the distortion world by Arceus marks a cosmic scale of tragedy. Exiled for its ferocity, it watches from the fringes, a renegade god in perpetual solitude. This Sinnoh legend didn't just expand the mythology, it humanized the creation story, showing even deities face rejection. Post-Diamond and Pearl, Pokemon's lore became mythological epics, with remakes like Brilliant Diamond incorporating Giratina's loneliness into plot twists. You battle it as a boss, but its story evolves the series by questioning divine justice. Is isolation the price of difference? Mimikyu's Pikachu disguise, born from a desperate need for acceptance that could kill those who see its true form, captures the ultimate fear of rejection. In Alola's sunny paradise, this ghost fairy type underscores hidden vulnerabilities. It influenced the trend of disguise mechanics in later games, like in Dede's gender swaps, but more importantly, it evolved emotional narratives in the anime, where Mimikyu episodes tug at heartstrings with failed friendships. You've probably chuckled at its costume, but peel back the cloth in your mind, and it's a poignant commentary on masking pain to fit in. Finally, Wally's frail journey in Ruby, Sapphire, and their remakes embodies human tragedy intertwined with Pokémon bonds. A sick kid gasping for air while catching his first Rults, he battles not just foes, but his own body and doubts. This side character's arc evolved trainer stories beyond the protagonist, showing perseverance through pain. In Oras, his expanded role made Hoenn feel more lived in, influencing how NPCs now have backstories that mirror player struggles. It's a reminder that in Pokémon, hope flickers even in weakness. These 10 stories collectively transformed Pokémon's narrative from a linear quest into a multifaceted exploration of the human condition. Starting with Gen 1's subtle hints in Cubone, the series built toward Gen 6 and 8's overt emotional payoffs, where tragedy isn't a detour but the fuel for growth. Game Freak didn't stop at tears. They used sorrow to deepen world building, making regions feel authentic and battles meaningful. Sales figures back this up. Games like Black and White saw spikes in engagement from story-driven content, and the anime's viewership grew with arcs echoing these laws. You've journeyed through them with me, and now you see how they elevated Pokémon from game to cultural phenomenon, proving that even in a world of pocket monsters, heartbreak builds unbreakable legends. But we're not done uncovering the layers just yet. Let's dive into some final revelations on fan theories that tie these tragedies together, and the untapped lore still lurking in the shadows. One of the most compelling fan theories posits a cycle of sorrow, connecting ghost types across generations. Take Yamask's human masks and Phantump's child spirits. Fans argue they're part of a larger reincarnation loop, where lost souls cycle through Pokémon forms until they find peace. Evidence? In the Pokédex, Yamask weeps for its past, while Phantump mimics children's laughter in the wind. This theory gained traction after Sword and Shield's Isle of Armor DLC, where ancient burial mounds hint at souls refusing to pass on. Imagine if a future game revealed a legendary Pokémon orchestrating this cycle, perhaps a forgotten sibling to Arceus, weaving AZ's weapon into the mix as a disruptor that shattered the balance. It would explain why Kalos has so many ghost outbreaks, eternal grief amplified by that ancient blast. Another revelation comes from N's isolation, linking to Giratina's exile. Fans theorize N was a vessel for distortion world energies, manipulated by Getsis to channel Giratina-like chaos into Team Plasma's plans. Clues abound. N's name evokes reverse world, and his Zoroark illusions mirror Giratina's warped reality. In Black and White 2, post-game events with N in the reverse world fuel this, suggesting his release of Pokémon was a subconscious bid for his own freedom from banishment-like upbringing. You've probably replayed those scenes, feeling the eerie parallels. Two outcasts, one human, one divine, both yearning to rejoin the world they observe from afar. Untapped tragic lore takes this deeper. Consider the implied connections to Mewtwo's origin, which we touched on earlier, but deserves expansion here. While not in our top 10, fans link it to AZ's weapon as a precursor technology, suggesting the Carlos catastrophe scattered genetic experiments worldwide, birthing orphans like the Litwick in abandoned labs. Pokédex entries for Ditto hint at artificial origins tied to failed revivals, much like Floette's rejection. This untapped thread could reveal a shadow history where human hubris repeatedly dooms Pokémon to sorrow, from Mewtwo's rage to Mimikyu's fatal disguise, a global pandemic of created loneliness. Burnett's revenge motif ties into a darker theory about forgotten toys in Unova's urban ruins. Fans speculate a hidden event in Black and White involved a Burnett cult, where discarded items animate en masse, echoing the region's industrial decay. Leaked beta files from data miners show cup content with haunted factories, implying Game Freak scaled back to avoid overwhelming kids, but left breadcrumbs in Shuppet's envy feeding. Picture exploring Castelia City's underbelly, where these spirits form a tragic resistance against neglect, untapped potential for a horror spin-off that blends Pokémon's whimsy with real dread. Wally's illness sparks theories of a cursed lineage among trainers. In Hoon remakes, his family history vaguely nods to ancient Devon Corporation experiments, possibly linked to Rayquaza's lore. Fans connect this to his Ralts bond, suggesting psychic Pokémon sense inherited grief, evolving into guardians against familial curses. This untapped angle humanizes the Elite Four battles, turning them into metaphors for overcoming generational trauma. You felt Wally's underdog spirit. What if his story foreshadows a trainer with AZ-like immortality quests? Even Cubone's lineage has revelations. Recent fan analyses of Gen 1 code reveal unused Marowak evolutions that cried blood, hinting at a bereaved clan wiped out by Rocket, with Alolan Marowak as survivors, adapting fire dances to honour the dead. This ties into Lotad region's orphans, suggesting migratory herds of grieving Pokémon form hidden societies in wetlands, untouched by trainers. The lore here is ripe for expansion. Imagine a DLC where you mediate between human encroachment and these spectral communities. Mimikyu's disguise obsession fuels the wildest theory, a Pikachu plague, where its true form spreads a curse, explaining rare Pikachu variants in fan mods. Untapped Pokédex notes in Japanese versions describe ancient Alolan tapestries of a shadow mouse that drove tribes mad, linking back to AZ's war as the origin of such deformities. It's chilling. Your favourite electric buddy could be a beacon hiding horrors. These theories and laws aren't just speculation. They've sparked academic papers on Pokémon as modern mythology, analysing how sorrow drives redemption arcs. From N's hope in releasing Reshiram to Wally's triumphant League challenge, each tragedy births resilience, evolving the narrative toward light. You've uncovered these with me, feeling the weight of each mask and exile, but also the warmth of bonds that endure. As we wrap this journey through Pokemon's shadowed heart, I want you to reflect on your own connections. Which of these stories hit closest to home? The lonely Mimikyu mirroring a time you felt unseen, or Cubone's cries echoing a personal loss? Share in the comments below. What's your most tragic Pokemon memory, and how has it shaped your love for the series? Your stories keep this conversation alive, turning our exploration into a community legacy. And if this has stirred your soul, stick around for future deep dives. We'll peel back more layers of Pokemon's emotional core, uncovering how these themes of sorrow and hope continue to redefine what it means to be a trainer. Until next time, remember, in every Pokeball, there's a story waiting to be told, one that might just heal as much as it hurts. If this story resonated with you, there's so much more to explore. Tap the Pokemon playlist to continue the adventure, and save it so you'll always have something soothing to fall asleep to, or choose the recommended video for another deep dive.